He bumped into the most popular girl. She looked at him with disgust and said that Taein was just a filthy otaku. A bully came from behind and slapped him on the head, telling him to go buy bread if he didn't want to get beaten again. Taein was a lonely new student and an otaku. A massive explosion erupted. A hideous monster appeared, roaring. A system screen popped up in front of him, saying he had been chosen, and now he would train for 66,000 years in the Tower of the Other World. If he accepted, he could choose any power. Taein chose a single ability: absolute shortcut. In just 1 second, 66,000 years passed. And just like that, this otaku awakened with every power and skill at the maximum level. In the beginning, gates opened and monsters came out. Humanity suffered a devastating loss, and with all that, a few chosen humans gained superpowers or magic-like abilities and fought against the monsters. The protagonist reads this on his phone. Suddenly, he starts to glow brightly and thinks that in his case, out of this entire world, it seemed like he was the only one who was chosen, wondering if this was reality. To get to this point, we must go back to the past. Beyond Taein was an ordinary second-year high school student. He could be considered a total loser, but he was just a guy who really loved reading manhwas. He comments that this week's episode was fun and that he's going to give it 10 stars since the new manhwa cover was incredible. This was good, so he gives it stars, saves, comments, and donates, sending a message to the author, until he accidentally bumps into a girl. The protagonist immediately tries to apologize, but she asks if he wasn't watching where he was going. She turns around angrily and continues on her way. Tae-in was also in the middle of a platonic romance, but a delinquent hits him on the head, calling him a pervert for making that creepy face. He should stop staring at Jo Yoon-ye like that. Taein thinks that he was the typical rich jerk, but now with the cliche that his dad works at the guy's father's company. So he apologizes, saying that compared to the jerks in manhwas, he was actually a decent guy. The bully tells him to go buy some bread if he doesn't want to go to hell, and Taein walks away, thinking this is all very cliche. But it would be a lie to say Taein isn't satisfied with this life, since he gets to read his manhwas and everything was fine, until an explosion suddenly goes off behind him. He turns around at the sound and comes face to face with a horrendous purple monster. Tae-in thinks this looked like one of those monsters that comes out of a portal in a Hunter story, the kind of thing used to show off the protagonist's powers, or maybe it's for a secondary character to show up and defeat. He prays for a magical girl to save him, but then he notices the delinquent. Wondering why he was there, he bets it's one of those situations where he has to decide whether or not to save the guy who's been bothering him. He wonders how to do that while his classmate is being attacked, until the system appears telling him he has been chosen. The protagonist comments that this status window is really nice. His classmate begs to be saved, terrified, but Tae-in tells him to wait because he's just going to check this out before saving him. Reading that he will now train for 66,000 years in the Tower of the Other World, and if he reaches the top, he will gain divine powers and become humanity's savior. The protagonist complains that they expect him to read everything in a critical situation and should just get to the point, saying it's much better now that it's clearer. His system informs him that if he accepts, he will get one power of his choice to climb the tower. Tae-in celebrates this while his classmate cries in fear of the monster. He asks if it could be anything he wants, and if anything goes. The system confirms, and the protagonist starts thinking of various possibilities where anything he can imagine would be possible. But the Tower of Challenges wasn't easy. He has 1 year to clear each floor, and the only way out is to reach the top or lose his life. The protagonist analyzes for a few seconds, questioning if it was just one skill or item. The delinquent asks if he couldn't go any faster, but the protagonist tells him to wait another second, then he makes his decision. Pressing the accept button, the system asks him to declare the one ability he desires. Tae-in takes a deep breath and replies that he wants a shortcut ticket to climb the 66,666 years of the Tower of Challenges. Even the monster and the bully are left confused. His system questions this. The protagonist says that items are also allowed, so a shortcut ticket should be accepted. Then that system complains that there should be a limit, as this could ruin the whole genre. Tae-in yells that anything was allowed, and the system, which was the central part of the world, was contradicting itself. So that system accepts and gives him the ticket. The protagonist comments that it really works, while it's explained that if he uses the item, he will receive all the tower's rewards. His system asks if he would like to use it, and the protagonist confirms, and so, his ticket to skip the Tower of Challenges is activated. A bright light starts to radiate from that spot, hitting the protagonist right after, quickly illuminating the entire city. For a moment, Earth became the brightest star in the entire universe. Tae-in looks at his hands, wondering if it really worked. His system congratulates him for completing the Tower of Challenges, as he will now receive the rewards. His SSS rank powers and abilities are unlocked, with everything maxed out. The monster and the bully are impressed, while the protagonist closes his eyes. meditating. Next, he starts to look at and approach the monster. The bully wonders if that guy just got more handsome. Tae-in says the monster has drawn enough attention, so it should just come and fight. The bully encourages him to do it, and the monster trembles in fear. It charges forward, screaming in anger. Tae-in moves his hand quickly, saying that, as expected in the beginning, the golden rule is a flick on the forehead. This simple flick on the creature ends up deleting it. Everything in front of him at the school starts to be destroyed, radiating throughout the entire city and spreading across the whole country. His simple flick had been planetary. Tae-in thinks this wasn't what he was expecting. He's amazed as the system calculates the rewards, gaining many things for having eliminated 389 gates, conquered a challenge, and killed 1 million monsters. Tae-in thinks he didn't expect this much. With the total casualties caused by him being 2 billion, his bully comments that this was insane, asking what exactly happened there, and Tae-in is impressed by this formality, saying that if he's right, he can use a spell, activating the ability to turn back time. He could reverse all of this, finally using the ability. The effects of the flick start to revert to 0, with the monster reappearing in front of the protagonist. Tae-in finishes his spell now. That monster panics, terrified of all this. The protagonist asks how this works and if it scared the monster, since it's his first time as a transcendent being, wondering where the game balance went while the monster tries to flee. But Tae-in traps it with a coordinate magic spell, saying he feels bad for taking its life twice, so he uses a dimensional portal to send it to another dimension. Tae-in stretches right after that. The bully comments that it was incredible and that he managed to wipe out that terrible monster. The protagonist replies that he didn't do that. He just sent it to another dimension. The delinquent says that was to be expected from Mr. Pervert, and that he knew he could count on him because he had saved his life. Now that he remembers, he hadn't said nice things before. Tae-in says that he saw him trying to protect him from the monster. He had asked him to buy bread earlier if he remembers correctly. The bully gets scared and tells him to forget it, while the protagonist walks towards him. The delinquent tries to shout that everything was fine and he didn't need anything anymore, and he's very sorry, begging for forgiveness. Tae-in analyzes him for a few seconds, telling him to wait a bit, as there's something he needs to do first. Looking outside, the delinquent comes face to face with several monsters attacking the city. He screams in fear and asks to be saved. Tae-in repeats for him to wait a bit, but the bully asks if there's anything more important than saving the school. The protagonist announces that he needs to save his mom and dad first. The bully replies that this was fair. Then the protagonist activates his teleport ability, vanishing from that place. At home, a commercial about an afternoon nap is playing. Tae-in's parents were watching it. The mother asks why it looked like only one person, and the father says it was a perfect day to watch TV on a couch. Until the news interrupts, announcing that Seoul is under attack and everyone must evacuate immediately. His father gets up from the couch, startled, wondering what was happening outside. Monsters were fighting to destroy the city of Seoul. They wonder what in the world was going on, as a monster approaches the window, preparing a power in its fist while Tae-in's parents try to hide. But the protagonist appears behind the creature and asks what's going on. Then he uses his inverted gravity ability on the target upon contact. The monster starts to levitate as high as it can, screaming in panic. Tae-in approaches the window and calls for his parents, telling them he's still their son. His parents ask what's going on and why he's there without taking his shoes off in the living room. Tae-in shouts that it's not important right now, but anyway, they've worked hard to care for him for 16 years. The sight of their son glued to his phone reading manhwas was something that worried them, but they don't have to worry anymore, because he's been chosen as the savior of humanity. His parents ask what nonsense he's talking about. Tae-in explains that he'd always wondered about manhwa protagonists facing calamities like this. Those guys would get powers in their stories or chances to fulfill their desires. But Tae-in wonders if they ever worried about their parents, because he would never be like that, using several enhancements on his own parents. They ask what nonsense their son is talking about. Tae-in declares he will protect his parents above all else, creating barriers around the house. He explains this should keep them safe for now, as the monsters won't be able to lay a finger on them. But now he's going to save the rest of the world, and his parents ask what on earth he's talking about. Tae-in says goodbye, telling them he loves them. He vanishes right after, as his parents say they love him too. Back at school, the protagonist appears, and the bully says he's back. He asks how his parents are, and Tae-in replies that they should be fine now. The bully says that's a relief, but the protagonist remembers the bread he'd sent him to buy, so he says he can't help himself. As a guy who was once bullied by this thug, it's his duty to teach him a lesson. He activates mass summoning magic, frightening the bully. Tae-in says it should be hamburger buns this time, so he should stuff himself with them, shooting several food packages. The bully is inundated with hamburger buns and gets up afterward. Tae-in says he's weak and at most would be a 7 out of 10 on the satisfaction scale. The bully asks what he's talking about, claiming he never did anything wrong enough to deserve this. The protagonist comments that he hasn't shown him enough of the story. He projects a small flashback to show him. He didn't even seem to remember, but Tae-in clearly remembers the sound of mocking laughter as he was beaten, the smell of his burning uniform that was taken off him because it stunk, the taste of the school lunch that was thrown in the toilet and forced into his mouth, the feeling of despair whenever he saw a lock on his glasses. He asks if he doesn't remember, and the delinquent screams that he doesn't and never did that. He admits he sent him to buy bread and is sorry, but he didn't do the rest, and he doesn't even wear glasses. Tae-in asks if he's saying he's wrong, and the bully says that the way he's putting it, it sounds like he really did those things. But the protagonist says he has received his apology and will forgive him, and as a gesture for their future relationship, he will turn him into something he likes. The bully thinks about becoming a bodybuilder. Tae-in activates his transmorph ability and shoots it at the bully. Smoke fills the place and begins to dissipate. Kim Il-jin is transformed into a hamburger bun. He asks what the protagonist did, and Tae-in comments that he's very cute. If he sincerely repents, he'll turn him back to normal, and Il-jin says he's sorry, until a voice calls out to him. Yoon-ye asks what he is. The protagonist turns around, surprised. He says he seems to be the one chosen by the gods, while Il-jin begs to be returned to his original form. Yoon-ye questions if the hamburger is alive, and the protagonist says it's cute. She asks if Tae-in isn't scared. The world had changed so drastically, and many people had lost their lives. For some reason, there was no one at school, and communications were down, so she couldn't call the police, and she was afraid for her life. She asks how the protagonist could be so happy. Tae-in calls the girl's name, questioning if she has ever read a webtoon. He says they're fun to read, and you don't have to think too much about it. They were the only ones there because the author is lazy. The girl asks what on earth he's talking about, and the protagonist comments that she's too boring to be the female main character. Yoon-ye is surprised by this, and the protagonist thinks she's the villainess breaking the flow of the chapters. So Tae-in wonders if he should bring in another female character himself. He activates the interdimensional summoning skill, thinking he just needs a better protagonist. The portal begins to glow, blinding everyone there. Yoon-ye asks what that is. The protagonist says he wants to bring the most beautiful and charming woman from all dimensions here right now. All the monsters outside get scared. The smoke begins to clear. Il-jin asks what the pervert did. Tae-in is startled by the girl who emerges from the smoke. She holds a bloody knife. She stands in front of the protagonist as the smoke disappears. Tae-in is completely stunned. The girl comments that she struck Jermaine with her own hands. The protagonist thinks she's the protagonist from a novel who seduces the tyrant who was supposed to be the villain, takes his life, and becomes a villainess herself. Her husband was audacious from the first moment he called her by her name. That was the first time someone had called her so casually, the heiress of the House of Libershan. Tae-in interrupts her explanation, telling her to stop because no one allowed her to change the genre. He says she must be Layla, and knows how important the first 3 chapters are for a webtoon. If she brings in an outside narrative like that, he'll be stuck in school for the next 3 episodes, and readers will think it's a slow webtoon. The girl continues her explanation without a care, but Tae-in tells her to stop with the rehearsed lines and sparkling flowers. Layla questions who he is to raise his voice when they don't even know each other, and the protagonist tells her to put down the knife and talk. He thinks he doesn't usually read these romance fantasies, and the girl asks where she is and why she's dressed like this. A moment ago, she was piercing her husband with this dagger, but the protagonist snaps his fingers and throws the dagger away, telling her to clean up the blood as well with his magic. The girl becomes divinely beautiful, making Yoon-ye and Il-jin blush. Layla asks who he is, and Tae-in turns aside, saying it's coming. He then casts a defensive barrier using system magic. A monster outside strikes the school with its club, but only manages to hit the barrier with no other effect. Yoon-ye screams in fear, and Layla asks what on earth that was. Tae-in watches the monster strike several more times, screaming in frustration at the lack of results. The protagonist comments that it's a perfect idiot monster for a warm-up. He flies out through the window, using a system limiter to 1/1,000,000th of his power. With the unranked ability, Shock Finger, the blow easily destroys the giant monster. The girls are impressed. Layla comments that it was incredible, and Yoon-ye says that monsters and magic shouldn't even be possible. Tae-in says that as long as it's fun, nobody cares. Using the D-rank ability, Freeze, all the monsters are frozen with immense ease. The protagonist advances using the Stomp ability, causing an earthquake that destroys several monsters. Tae-in sighs deeply, saying he might have gotten too excited and destroyed everything. Even if he holds back, This power is too much. He then becomes happy about it. The system notifies him that he has defeated the first monster. An infinity of more monsters advance towards the protagonist. Tae-in thinks it's a fantasy game mixed with the hunter and portal genre, which is the best. He then activates flight at maximum speed, along with his psionic ability. The monsters are sliced apart as the protagonist continues to advance without stopping. He strikes a final dragon-shaped monster and then stops to think. He wonders what to do about the portal. Normally, he would have to go into each one and complete it, but he didn't need to bother, so he uses his dimensional exile ability. The monsters are teleported through the portal and sealed away without a chance to fight back. The protagonist says he'll just finish off the portal entirely. His dimensional exile closes. Tae-in comments that this should keep Seoul safe for now, teleporting back to the school. He finds the girls talking to each other. Layla says he's here. While he was gone, she was listening to people talk about this world, so she traveled to the future. The protagonist comments that wasn't quite it, but he would just adjust her to fit into this world using his transformation ability. The protagonist says that if she keeps that outfit, it'll be hard to draw her, especially after a fight with big monsters. Layla is then transformed into casual clothes. Kim Il-jin falls in love with the girl. Layla orders him to bring her a cape or a dress immediately. The protagonist says her hair must be hard to draw too, so he'll tie it up. Yunya says that's something she never wanted to know, that perverts tastes. Tae-in says she should hold back the aggressive words while they're talking among friends, and that he just picked something comfortable. Considering the whole setup, maybe the shorts are too much, but Il-jin begs him not to change them. The protagonist tells Miss Lieberschan that he knows it looks new, but she can wear it. Yoon-ye asks if he can make any clothes, like Chanel or Louis Vuitton, and the protagonist questions if she's that kind of character. Layla interrupts, saying she's not Lieberschan anymore, but Kleshwash, a noble name meaning she has become a princess of the royal family. The protagonist comments that even with her hair tied up, it's still a mess. Layla says she is no longer worthy of the name Kleshwash because she took her own husband's life. The protagonist says he's sorry and doesn't know the story of her world, but he has no idea what she was talking about. He can tell she's lived a tragic life. However, he doesn't want the details, and Layla asks what he's talking about. The protagonist tries to guess that she had a terminal illness, and the girl asks how he knew, but that wasn't all, as she probably had an arranged marriage with someone she didn't love, and her husband made a mistake, and things ended the way they did. She was falsely accused of being a villain, and then that incident happened. The girl cries, saying it's all true. Tae-in says it must have been tough, but she doesn't have to live like that anymore. Layla mentions she took the crown prince's life, but the protagonist replies that he attacked first. He activates the Seraphim's blessing on her and says she's done nothing wrong. The girl comments that she feels a warm sensation. Tae-in replies that he has cured every disease in her body, and she's no longer close to death. Now she can live freely in this world. Layla thinks that this time, she is free, without a powerful father or her most admired friend. Not even her husband, the crown prince. None of them had given her freedom. This man she had just met gave her this gift. The girl thanks him for it, crying. Suddenly, the protagonist notices he's defeated 33 monsters and earned an achievement. So he says it was nothing and just the beginning of the story. But the system informs him that the constellations are interested in his achievement. By satisfying constellations, he can receive sponsorships, unique skills, and item upgrades. The protagonist wonders what this is, with so many constellations interested in him. So he orders to block them all. The system refuses, asking how he can turn down such a great opportunity. Tae-in says that personally, he's not a big fan of constellations, but he changes the subject with his friends, asking if they all want to join him to save the world. Elsewhere, at the Interdimensional Council of Celestial Beings, some constellations gather. Huja Karuna of Raj asks how he dares to refuse a constellation's favor, saying he's never been so insulted. Omoshiroi, the constellation of games, says it was interesting, and Oshiku replies that maybe they should teach him a lesson, but Sekai, the king of constellations, tells everyone to calm down. Even though he's a human, he has ascended the Tower of Challenges and must be respected. Muramu of Despair says it's impossible since he's just a human, and Demeta of Envy adds that he skipped all the floors. A constellation asks to go to that dimension. He says he'll talk to him himself, and if he sees potential in him to change the order of the universe, he will eliminate the protagonist without any hesitation. Back on Earth, Tae-in says he's going to distribute all his power. Now they should go ahead and defeat the monsters at will, but Yunya says it's pointless. She wants to know why she should risk her life, and Il-jin agrees that it's too much. Tae-in tells them not to worry. Since they are his companions, they absolutely will not lose their lives. Yunye argues that at his level, he could take care of everyone by himself, but the protagonist complains that she keeps saying things like that. Even though he's the protagonist, if he just destroys everything alone, It wouldn't be any fun. Then a monster charges at him. The protagonist strikes the monster, killing it in one blow, saying that the stronger the main character is, the more interesting the stories of the characters around him need to be. Yoon-ye says she doesn't understand anything he's saying, but Lila says she understood, so they have to kill monsters to save the world. She has already taken her husband's life. Now she feels she can take the life of anything. She turns towards a monster, and the protagonist thinks that his goal was to make this interesting, and for now, he would form his party. The role he had chosen for Layla. The girl activates her malice release ability and makes several cuts with her dagger. That monster is sliced into hundreds of pieces. Layla celebrates the feeling of release. She's the group's assassin dagger. Eun-ye asks why she's acting like this, and the protagonist says she's established a clear character concept. The girl comments it's a feeling she's never had before in her life, as another monster approaches from behind, advancing to attack her quickly. Some tentacles grab her. Il-jin yells for them to save his princess, and Yoon-ye suggests they do it quickly. The hamburger advances, and the protagonist celebrates. He thinks about his role. Il-jin focuses and hits the creature with a powerful headbutt, but nothing happens, and he asks why his ability is so trivial, making him just a mascot. He yells at the protagonist to give him something cool too, and Layla thanks the hamburger. Il-jin turns around saying it was no big deal. Tai-in says that was fun, and quickly cuts the creature down. Yoon-ye was completely shocked by all of this. Tae-in says this is where she should show her ability, but Yoon-ye says she doesn't want to and can't. He is incredibly strong and can turn back time. Plus, he was chosen by the gods himself, so he can change things back to how they were before the world became like this. Everyone who lived their daily lives in this world is close to losing them, but his fun seems more important. Tae-in confirms this right away. He says that she'll understand someday too. In this world, having fun is the most important thing. Yoon-ye says the atmosphere suddenly changed. The protagonist yells that there's a bird monster flying there. She should defeat it with magic. The girl moves her staff from side to side. Holding it with extreme force, the monster is sent flying far away. Everyone is impressed by this. Eun-ye was a strength-based warrior. Il-jin says she looked like a baseball player, and Yoon-ye comments that she trained a little when she was young, while Tai-in complains he didn't know that. Then he notices something behind his back. He turns to defend against a magic attack, wondering what kind of monster could do that. A man approaches, saying that to be able to interfere with his strong ki, especially with bare hands. Tai-in is surprised, recognizing who it is. The man says he's surprised to see an unknown master in the east. The protagonist says it's the heavenly demon. Cheon-ma asks how he knows his true identity, and the protagonist says he's a huge fan. Yoon-ye asks how the pervert knows who he is. Tai-in tells her to look up Cheon-ma's webtoon. He was an iconic character in the martial arts genre, and is always portrayed as the absolute villain. Cheon-ma comments that he talks too much, and that the tremendous energy coming from the east might have been his doing. Tae-in asks if he's talking about when he attacked earlier, and the shockwave hit the eastern peninsula of Korea. That was him, and he wants to know why he's asking. Cheon-ma explains that over the centuries, the world's martial arts have worsened, and humans have become weak beings. He was also losing interest in the peaceful world, so heaven and earth were being remade. Monsters started to appear there. Cheon-ma is happy when monsters fall from the sky. He experienced a chaos he had never known before. Just as he was about to be completely consumed by the chaos, a massive wave of energy suddenly rushed in from the east. Cheon-ma, shouting that it was dangerous, tried to defend by using the extreme seal of the heavenly demon god. The blast of power struck the man, but he managed to dissipate it. He was impressed by this destructive power, and it didn't end there. He watched as everything began to return to normal. He had witnessed an inexplicable phenomenon. Time was reversing, restoring everything that had been destroyed. This was undoubtedly the work of an absolute master. His instincts drove him to move, walking on water to cross continents and seas, and so he arrived there in person. Yoon-ye said, setting aside the fact that he crossed the China Sea, how can a Chinese person speak Korean so well? Tai-in grumbled that she had a point. Cheon-ma called out to the unknown master from the east, declaring he would take his life now. Tai-in shouted that this was so cool, because this was the real heavenly demon. Cheon-ma laughed, saying they should have a little fun. The girls thought that maybe he didn't want to do this. Cheon-ma prepared his demonic energy, unleashing the celestial dragon palm against the protagonist. The blow caused a huge explosion, but the protagonist appeared behind him, saying, that was a very slow attack. Cheon-ma turned, wondering what had just happened. Tae-in mentioned he'd always wanted to do that, get behind an enemy and say too slow in a deep voice. He had awakened and grown stronger, and now he wanted to know just how strong Cheon-ma was, because that technique was awesome. Cheon-ma apologized for not understanding. Then he turned away, saying he'd lost interest and would rather go hunt the monsters ahead. It was a waste of time coming here. Iljin said that was just an excuse because his technique failed. Cheon-ma questioned if this country was Korea, thinking that having a mere weakling in charge left it with no future. But the protagonist called out to the heavenly demon, warning him that he had crossed the line. He didn't care about anything else, but this wasn't just Korea. It was the Republic of Korea. Cheon-ma immediately recoiled at that. He said it was impossible, that he couldn't even feel his presence. So he tried to launch a palm strike at the protagonist. Tae-in simply watched the energy coming towards him, blocking it with a rock without any difficulty. But Cheon-ma trapped him with more demonic energy. Yun-ye called out to him. The heavenly demon reflected that this martial art compressed space itself. Tae-in just broke free by moving, and commented that it was very refreshing. Cheon-ma was surprised, and the protagonist replied that it was annoying but still very cool. He then ordered him to become his companion. Everyone was shocked by this. Cheon-ma said it was an absolute ability he had perfected over centuries, yet not a single move had worked. He was number one under the heavens and wouldn't accept losing to a brat like him. Tae-in questioned that title, saying he was just thinking of something fun. Then he called to Cheon-ma, telling him he could no longer live a normal life, and activated his transformation ability. Iljin, surprised, asked what he was going to do. The smoke hit Cheon-ma, and the man questioned what kind of trick this was, noticing his voice and appearance had become feminine. Everyone in the group was stunned. Tae-in declared he was no longer the strongest man under the heavens, but now the strongest woman. Cheon-ma asked what that bastard had done to her. Yun-ye yelled that he was a real pervert, and the protagonist complained. Gender-bending a charming character for fun is an ancient creative trope, and for some reason, it's become rare. Yun-ye tried to say something, but the protagonist told her to shut up and not speak more than 3 lines. Cheon-ma charged at the protagonist, demanding to be changed back, but Tae-in just smacked her on the head. He said it had been a while since she'd been hit, always being at the top like that, and if she acted up again, he'd hit her harder. Yun-ye complained that he was saying such things while hitting and threatening a woman, calling him a terrible guy. The protagonist commented that he had just gotten another party member. Cheon-ma just asked if she couldn't be changed back, now being the group's monk. Tae-in said they should all act nicely and hunt some monsters nearby. Commenting that this was too easy, he used his teleportation skill, announcing that he was now going to save the world. The girls wondered among themselves what they should do. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., United States, in the White House Situation Room, they said there was no time to discuss the disaster. Humanity would be extinct. They needed to make a quick decision. The president questioned if they should use nuclear bombs, even if it meant targeting their own territory. The Secretary of Defense then said with a heavy heart that even if they used all their equipment, whether conventional, mechanical, or chemical and biological, once the gate was open, they couldn't stop the number of monsters. The president slammed his fist on the table, cursing the whole situation. He wished that bombs could at least take care of the gates, but Tae-in interrupted, saying he'd handle it. The president asked who he was, and the protagonist greeted him. He introduced himself as the pervert from Korea and the savior of humanity. Everyone at the table fell silent. Then they shouted, asking how he got there and pointing their guns, but Tae-in told them to listen. One of the men ordered him to put his hands on his head or he'd shoot. The protagonist complained that it was painful. The others yelled that he appeared out of thin air and was definitely a monster, but the president told them to wait. Shots were fired at the protagonist, but the security guards were left stunned. He stopped all the bullets just by moving his hand forward. Then he laughed, saying that with this happening, they had to trust him completely. He ordered them to get rid of all the nuclear equipment they had. The president claimed that wasn't something they could just do. Tae-in used his mass manipulation ability to take control of everyone in the room. Those people became like zombies, and the president picked up the phone. He ordered the command to be spread to NASA and all units with code 389. They were to launch all nuclear assets immediately. The people were terrified by the order, but they complied. The missiles were launched. The exact number of warheads was unknown, but the number fired at that moment was approximately 8,000 units. The protagonist decided he would do it and activated his invisible hand ability, moving a massive palm to catch the weapons. Then he used his replicate ability, multiplying all the missiles to bring them under his control. Tae-in's command was to bring back every single missile, leaving none behind, and then to launch all of them towards the portal. The nuclear weapons began to fly towards the portal. Tae-in celebrated this with a triumphant look on his face. Meanwhile, in Moscow, at the Supreme Council, people were saying that the United States had launched all its nuclear weapons and they needed to retaliate, but Tae-in appeared, saying there was no need. Everyone fired at him, but the protagonist blocked the shots once again. The security guards asked what that was. Back in the United States, the secretary announced that all the portals had been cleared. Tae-in appeared, saying he had saved the world and thanked them for trusting him and launching all the bombs. The president wondered what he had done, but the protagonist explained that the nuclear bombs had no effect on reality, and the portals just vanished. Everyone thanked the Korean hero. Tae-in said there were still monsters outside, so they should do their best. He then used his teleport ability, vanishing while wishing the United States good luck. In Korea, Cheon-ma took down a monster with a kick. The protagonist said she was doing well. The girls saw he was there, and Yoon-ye asked if he had any idea how many times they had come close to dying. Now missiles came and blew up the portal. Was that your doing? Tae-in confirmed it was, and added that Il-jin was working out well, but now they needed someone to play the role of a tank. An explosion went off behind them. The girls shielded themselves from the dust that followed. A constellation appeared, stating that the actions of Earth's transcendent had shaken the order of the universe. She, Yudorine of Justice, would judge him in the name of justice. The group was surprised by this, but Tae-in just thought to himself that he'd found his tank. Cheon-ma said she could feel the energy of a true master. The protagonist told her to stay put. Then he called out to the system, questioning what it had said about divine seats, but he remembers blocking everything related to constellations. He says it might have been a misunderstanding, that he doesn't hate constellations, but was just busy with the monsters invading Earth. Yudorine replies that this is the problem, as humanity hasn't sacrificed enough, and it's all the protagonist's fault. Tae-in questions her about humanity not being sacrificed. So, the fact that portals were opening and filling with monsters, and countless people were losing their lives, it was all the work of those constellations. Yudorine confirms this, and the system announces that a world explanation is coming. Every living being in the universe produces an energy the constellations need to survive, which they call negentropy. That's why they create them. The more intelligent and stronger the species, the more negentropy they can gain. To make them stronger, they create trials, and some species grow stronger, thus providing much more negentropy, or they go extinct, becoming material for the birth of better species. But this time, he overcame the tutorial on his own, so humanity lost its chance to grow as a whole. The constellations want to observe his progress, but since he blocked them, there have been many discussions. She personally manifested for the chance to judge him. Tae-in replies that this is ridiculous. She just threw an explanation like that at him, and it was absurd. Suddenly, this all turned into some sci-fi thing, and Yoon-ye wonders what the hell he's talking about. The protagonist calls Il-jin and tells him to summarize her explanation in 3 lines. The hamburger says that for those who skip the explanation, they can start from here. The constellations drain energy. They opened gates to cause chaos, but the protagonist interfered and made them angry. Tae-in says that after hearing all that, these guys are really crazy. Layla steps forward saying she can't forgive them, but Cheon-ma tells her to wait. She warns them that they are not at a level to interfere. Tae-in activates his void emergence skill. He then reconfigures it into the shape of a sword made of space. He charges towards Yudorine, telling her to take this. Because he really dislikes this whole constellation business, his sword class ability activates. He launches dozens of special slashes at the woman. Yudorine prepares to defend with her sword and blocks them easily. Tae-in thinks that this sword erases the existence of everything in its cutting path, but she blocked it so easily. Yudorine calls him the transcendent of Earth. She says he is no match for her. The protagonist lands on the ground and asks if that's really all she's got. He then activates his planetary explosion skill. The blast illuminates Yudorine's face. It cuts through the atmosphere, erasing everything in front of Tae-in, but Yudorine just blocks it and says it's not bad. The protagonist decides he'll do better, using multicasting. To create a crisis by himself, he needs to counterattack. He tells the girl to come at him now, because they need to make a dopamine-fueled action scene together. Then, his hand disappears. The protagonist notices it in a second. Yudorine simply advises the Transcendent of Earth to accept his judgment peacefully. Tae-in screams in pain without his hand. He then activates his time reversal skill. He says it doesn't matter, because he'll just go back in time as many times as needed. He just needs to go back until he's ready. But he notices Yudorine isn't frozen in time. She explains that constellations and cosmic beings are not affected by distortions of time and space. Going back to the moment Cheon-ma said he was a true master, Tae-in tells him to calm down, because this person is very strong. He wonders what the author was thinking, adding a character like this. Yudorine says she doesn't want to test her patience any longer, and that he must accept his judgment. The protagonist questions what this judgment she's talking about is. Yudorine manifests something in her hand. She reveals the scales of justice, which Tae-in recognizes. She explains that these scales place values on each side, and the laws of the universe calculate them. The protagonist gets frustrated with the explanations, So Yudu Rinai says she will show him directly the benefit his existence brings to the universe versus the threat he poses to the order of the universe. She wonders which will be heavier. Tae-in asks which side is which. Yudu Rinai looks at the scales, which have tipped to the side of threat. She informs him that he is a problem for the order of the universe. The decision of the scales of justice is an absolute truth, so according to it, she will suppress him. The protagonist thinks for a moment, then he smiles, saying that if these scales can judge any problem, he has a suggestion. Yudu Rinai confirms, as from a cosmic point of view, human issues are trivial. The protagonist says that before she leaves, she must solve one of humanity's greatest problems by weighing it on the scales. The constellation replies that she cannot ignore such a request, and wants to know what value he would like to measure. Eun-ye questions what he is doing in this situation, and the protagonist tells her not to worry because this is fun. He can't resist a universal balancing game. He then asks which manhwa is more fun, plus 999 reinforced stick, or what can I do alone? Yudu Rinai is surprised by the question, along with the other girls. Even Il-jin didn't understand. She asks what he just said. Tae-in repeats, wanting to know which of the two manhwas is more fun. Yunya asks what those things are, and the protagonist asks if she doesn't know these webtoons. He says she should sell her brain to him, but the girl replies there's no way to sell that. The protagonist responds that she could just erase her own memories with some kind of skill. Il-jin tells the constellation to ignore him, as he's obsessed with webtoons, but Yudu Rinai didn't know what they were. The protagonist explains that it's the most fun thing humans have ever invented, and the constellation replies that they don't judge trivial emotions like fun. Tae-in retorts that for a constellation, she doesn't seem to know anything about this world because there's nothing more important than fun. Anyway, he'll simplify it to her level for a second. Yudu Rinai wonders why the mood has suddenly shifted. The protagonist continues, stating that she is the constellation of justice and maintains the order of the universe, which Yudu Rinai confirms, because the consequences if the order of the universe is broken are beyond anyone's predictions. Tae-in says that, by her own logic then, she was just sacrificing him for consequences she can't even guess. Yudu Rinai is left speechless, and the protagonist continues that she was about to say that small sacrifices for the greater good are inevitable. From the cosmic perspective of the scales of judgment, talking about the order of the universe is biased in itself. It might be fair from a cosmic point of view, but from a human perspective, it's totally unfair. Yudu Rinai responds that he is claiming to be more important than the universe itself, and Tae-in says that's what these scales are for, because forcing him to sacrifice himself from a cosmic perspective is a question of fair versus unfair, so they should think about it. The girl creates two weights on the scales. Then, it starts to tip to the side of unfair. Yunya asks what just happened, and the protagonist replies that the result was pretty obvious. The girl is completely stunned by this. Tae-in asks if she still intends to restrain him, claiming he's a threat to the universal order. Yudu Rinai responds that he is correct, and understands that this is very unfair to him. Layla says that Master Tae-in is very smart, and Yunya admits she still doesn't understand what's happening. The protagonist explains that it means justice can change depending on one's perspective. He asks to make a suggestion to the constellation of justice. If she's worried about him breaking the universal order, she can keep an eye on him by staying by his side. He never planned to mess with the order, and just got angry knowing the constellations attacked humanity. Besides, helping the weak is her duty. Yudu Rinai says that this is incredibly rational and a very clever point, and she promises to stay by his side. Cheon-ma thinks that he turned a cosmic being into an ally with his charisma alone, and Tae-in says there's one more thing. He wants to know if she thinks it's fair for the constellations to open gates on Earth and take human lives. Yudu Rinai is dumbfounded for a few seconds but looks down. She creates two spheres and weighs them on the scales. The side of the humans tips, showing they are in the right. Yudu Rinai remains silent and just sighs as the protagonist grows irritated with her. She begins to fly high, leaving planet Earth. Then she uses a spell to cleanse all the invasions. In one world, an elephant is chasing humans, trying to exterminate them, but suddenly it stops, and the humans turn around. That monster had vanished, along with monsters from other places on the planet. Yudu Rinai finishes casting her spell, using sacred purification. Layla notices a light that blinds everyone from within planet Earth. Cheon-ma comments that all the demonic energy had vanished in an instant. The protagonist says that's to be expected from a constellation. This was one of the great moments of that chapter, and Yudu Rinai says she felt manipulated, but the protagonist brushes it off, thinking that protecting the Earth was just a piece of the cake. Besides, he gained an incredible person for his group, as Yudu Rinai changes her clothes. Everyone blushes at her outfit. Tae-in asks what she's doing, and Yu Rinai says she just took off her armor since she's not in combat. The protagonist tells her to put something on and uses transformation magic, creating a casual outfit for her while thinking how beautiful she was. Yu Rinai wonders why she should wear something with zero defense, taking off her shirt, but the protagonist tells her to keep the clothes on when she needs to be dressed. Yu Rinai complains that humans are incomprehensible, and the system appears to Tae-in, calling him Mr. Pervert. The other constellations have grown angrier, saying that even the constellation of Justice has been changed. Tae-in complains that they, humans, should be the ones getting angry, and that he has to go crush them, but the system tells him that before that, the Tower Master wants to meet him in person. Yu Rinai says there were many discussions about the Tower Master being responsible for the situation by offering a random skill to a bad person. The system says it will escort him to the dimension of eternal night. Tae-in says that in that case he'll have a little chat with them. He's being transferred and tells the system to wait. After all, he finally made great companions, and it would be a waste to leave them alone. Cheon-ma says they were caught up in his unilateral decisions, and Layla asks where they are going. Tae-in pretends the system is starting to transfer them on its own. Then he tells it to hurry up, and the system initiates the teleport to the dimension of eternal night. A light hits the group, making them vanish from there. The group starts to be carried away by the light, arriving at a castle shortly after. Yoon-ye asks where they were, and Iljin says he feels dizzy. Tae-in says this must be the top of the Tower of Trials, but the Tower Master welcomes the constellation of Justice. He says it's an honor to have such a guest in this broken-down place. He was Sugushi Nujo, the Tower Master, and it had been a while since he last saw such a sight, and the companions who came with him. He questions how insects like them dare to set foot in this sacred place, saying he will take their lives and tear their bodies apart. He emanates an energy that terrifies the whole group. Eun-ye calls for her mother, and Iljin says he just wanted to eat a hamburger bun before he died. Tae-in cracks a smile and says, so this is it. This was the first boss they would face as a full team. The protagonist sees this like a video game fight. Then he smiles, saying this is going to be a lot of fun. Layla asks if he's planning on fighting that thing, and Yoon-ye replies that she wants to go home. The protagonist tells them not to worry, because if they work together, they can do it. Until Sugushi grabs him, asking how he dares to step on the top of the tower without even climbing all the floors. Tae-in wonders if he's in a position to be beaten up again. Sugushi slams him on the ground, wanting to know how much he plans to insult him, because he was going to tell him what his problem was. He was ignorant, arrogant, cunning, selfish, and stubborn. On top of that, he was irresponsible, vulgar, and every other bad thing, while Tae-in wonders how long he's going to keep complaining. Sugushi says that above all, he only thought of himself, hitting him with a blast of energy. That shock starts to injure the protagonist. Tae-in groans in pain from all the damage. Sugushi says he will make him pay for the years of pain he should have experienced, and will make sure of it. The girls on the team are shocked by this. The Tower Master says he feels sorry for the others who met him now, because they were going to lose their lives, until Cheon-ma warns him that he'll be the one going to hell. She appears behind the Tower Master and uses her Heavenly Demon's Destruction Seal. The blow has an impact on Sugushi, but he replies that this might seem unfair. He repels the blow, saying that even though she's not a transcendent, she was able to withstand that. Too bad. She should curse the pervert who brought her to her own grave. He feels sorry for Yu Rinai, since she had to see such a deplorable sight. The constellation argues that this wasn't the right way to treat a human who cleared the tower according to the imposed rules. Sugushi replies that he is a being who serves the constellations. That's why all of them, including Wrath, find this man's existence uncomfortable, and he was just fulfilling his responsibility. The protagonist wonders about the constellation of Wrath. Yu Rinai says he had a fair point. At that moment, everyone except her was thinking the same thing, that this would be their last day. But Tae-in says they definitely won't lose their lives. He frees himself from Sugushi's palm. The Tower Master says there's no way this is happening, demanding to know how he escaped his authority. The protagonist replies that he is ignorant and arrogant. In this kind of battle story, it's natural for the protagonist to counterattack after taking a few hits. He then uses his power on Cheon-ma. She asks what on earth that was, and the protagonist tells her not to forget the feeling she just experienced. Because when you feel like you're about to die, it means you absolutely will not lose, especially if you see it written in red. Yu Rinai thinks it's incredible that a mere human can face the Tower Master so effortlessly. Sugushi says he admits he underestimated him, But he was wrong about one thing. His companions will definitely lose their lives, expanding his power toward them. The protagonist blocks the blow with his energy, saying it's cunning to aim for his allies first. Sugushi wonders how he got so strong, saying he's at least 10,000 times more powerful. The protagonist thinks he can finally say it. He says that he was only using 1/1,000,000th of his power. Back then, against the monster banging on the school window, the protagonist had gotten excited about awakening and started to show off. So he put a limit on his own strength. The system notifies him that his limit has been released to 100%. Iljin thinks about how he could send continents flying but felt weak fighting Yu-Du Rinai. Tai-In says he's sorry, but this guy was stronger than he thought, so he can't save their screen time. He activates the shock hit skill and pierces Sugushi twice. The Tower Master thinks this is impossible, but the protagonist warns him that Sugushi's selfishness and stubbornness would end here. The Tower Master yells to Miss Yu-Du Rinai that this isn't right, that his power comes from him and shouldn't be able to surpass him. He then begs her to save him, but Tai-In punches him in the face, calling him irresponsible. He should clean up his own mess, but saying that made him an annoying bastard too, as Sugushi screams in pain. He says that if he's swept away like this, chaos will engulf the tower and the dimension. The order of the universe will break. But the protagonist cuts him in half, saying this is annoying. Sugushi spits blood and starts to disappear, warning him that he'll regret this. But the protagonist says he just defeated a super strong boss. Yu-Du Rinai wonders how he defeated a cosmic entity at such a speed that she couldn't even intervene. The protagonist apologizes, saying they must have all been worried, and his friends yell that he was irresponsible because they almost lost their lives. But Tae-In tells them to wait a second. He didn't get to talk about the selfishness part. This will haunt him forever, and the girls think he's a selfish bastard. But the protagonist looks at the system, which had notified him that he completed the reward for defeating the first cosmic entity and can now ascend. Tai-In suggests it's like a power-up that can enhance his fighting. It sounds fun, and he wonders how many stages are left. Yu-Du Rinai asks if he realizes what he's just done. By taking the Tower Master's life, he has become an enemy of all the constellations. The protagonist asks if he should just lose his life like Sugushi said, but Yu-Du Rinai says no. So Tai-In replies that it doesn't matter if all the constellations are against him, because he's gained her as an ally. Yu-Du Rinai asks since when, and the protagonist changes the subject. He wants to find the constellation of Wrath that the Tower Master mentioned before. Yu-Du Rinai asks if he's planning to fight the constellation of Wrath, but the protagonist denies it, saying he just wants to try his luck with dialogue. The girl says that's fine then, and Yunya reflects that he's just an idiot. Iljin says that's her Tai-In, and she has no doubt he'll protect universal peace alongside the constellation of justice. She adds they have to go home. A light hits the group once more and begins to teleport them out of the tower. This time, Tai-In and Yu-Du Rinai aren't affected by space-time. They appear in a completely different place. The protagonist asks where they are, and Yu-Du Rinai recognizes the place. She tells him it's the chamber of the constellation of Wrath, Huja Karuna. The girls comment that it's very hot and they're in the center of a volcano. Yunya asks why he keeps dragging her everywhere. The protagonist replies that having them around gives him strength, and the girls tell him to cut the weird talk. However, only Layla believes him, and Yunya asks why she's falling for it. Huja Karuna begins to laugh hysterically, stunning everyone. Yu-Du Rinai reclaims her armor. He says they are bold to bring these insects into his domain. Then he crashes to the ground, exploding everything in his path. He strikes Yu-Du Rinai's sword, calling her an insolent fool. The girl tries to resist and calls out Huja Karuna's name. The constellation replies that it's been a long time since he's seen her, until he's struck by a fist. The protagonist hits him, telling him not to touch his friends. All of his companions are impressed by this. Yu-Du Rinai questions what happened to his plan of just talking things out. Tai-In says she doesn't need to thank him, as he was just trying to save her since she attempted to resist. The girl says that Huja Karuna just can't control his anger and was born with a tendency to use violence all the time. Huja Karuna appears somewhere and asks if that is the designated planet. It was a beautiful landscape that captured his admiration, and from now on, it would be his favorite. But he starts to feel angry, saying he only just found this beautiful planet now. He smashes the ground with all his might, destroying the world from one side to the other. Huja Karuna complains that he always ends up this way and that he's so angry. The protagonist comments that he's just stupid, and Huja Karuna asks how an insect dares to lay a hand on him. The lava in the territory begins to spread. Yu-Du Rinai says they're in trouble because this dimension is integrated with Huja Karuna. If his anger explodes, the crater here will erupt too. The lava was formed by the obsidian of Wrath and incinerates any material, but Tai-In just asks if they'll be in trouble if the lava rises. In that case, he just needs to calm him down quickly, activating his absolute zero magic. The protagonist manages to freeze Huja Karuna, but he breaks free from the ice soon after. Yudu Rinai says it's useless because Huja Karuna is the embodiment of wrath itself, and they can't stop him. But Tai-in shouts that there are too many explanations. He clashes his fist with Huja Karuna's. Tai-in thinks that this constellation is strong, on a completely different level from the Tower Master he fought before. Huja Karuna asks what this freezing feeling is and says he likes it, but he's just angry. The protagonist doesn't understand what he's saying, but the system activates the empathy skill. The two connect quickly. Huja Karuna wonders what this is. Yudu Rinai tells the protagonist to stop connecting their emotions, but Tai-in replies that it's okay and he'll try to calm him down while they're connected. The constellation says he's feeling things in his mind he's never seen before and it's good, but he's getting angry. Yudu Rinai says this is bad because the protagonist will be consumed by the rage, and Anya questions what's wrong with him. The protagonist breaks free, saying that didn't feel right. He says he's sorry for blocking his messages and hitting him first, but he wants to find a way to resolve this just by talking. However, Huja Karuna's fist flies toward his face. He says he talks too much for a failure. Tai-in wonders about being a failure. Huja Karuna grabs him by the neck, saying his negentropy value is too low, which is why they are trying to annihilate and reset him. Yudu Rinai holds Huja Karuna back, asking if the portal wasn't open to test humanity, but to exterminate them. The man says she's right. Tai-in complains that this is annoying. He says they need to stop with these explanations because it will wear out the reader's ears and activate stage 1 of Ascension. Huja Karuna is thrown back by the Planet Buster ability. Tai-in says that meant nothing to him, because he will become the protagonist of the best webtoon of all time. Huja Karuna flies through the air, wondering how an insect possesses so much power to rival him, who surpasses 10 stars. The protagonist looks at himself in a mirror, saying his hair and eyes have changed, and this is the first purple stage. Huja Karuna charges toward the planet, letting out a roar that sounds like a meteor. He shouts that he will take his life today. Tai-in complains about all the exclamation points. He lands a punch on him while telling him to cut it out. Huja Karuna thinks there's no way and blocks the attack. He gave it his all and got nothing. The protagonist advances once more, repeatedly telling him to cut the exclamation points while destroying parts of Huja Karuna's body. Besides, he should just fall quietly, because this is supposed to be fun. So he throws him far away. Huja Karuna loses consciousness and falls to the ground near the protagonists. Yudu Rinai thinks that a constellation has lost its life at human hands. This was a collapse in the cosmic order. Huja Karuna gets up from the ground, laughing. He says this was fun, and that he should have shown this earlier. The protagonist wonders if this is already phase 2, and knows that a villain's laugh in this situation is not a good sign. Huja Karuna says it seems all his companions are already lifeless. The protagonist turns around, telling him not to mention that. He sees the girls lying on the ground due to the immense heat. Yudu Rinai says that Huja Karuna's anger increases the heat and makes him stronger. The constellation asks why justice is wasting its time with these insects, since they will be extinct soon. The protagonist reflects his aura, saying he's just spouting crap. Huja Karuna warns that this insect can't stop the end of humanity, and that he has already set his arrangements in motion. He will spread his rage virus across the planet. Tai-in questions what he's talking about. Huja Karuna replies that from now on, every living being on Earth will be infected. They will lose their minds and destroy each other until nothing is left, and the protagonist gets even more furious. He screams Huja Karuna's name with all his might. Yudu Rinai says the volcano is erupting. They need to get out of there, using teleportation magic. The protagonist readies his fist to strike him one more time, but is already being teleported. That light rises in the volcano's dimension, which erupts the next moment. On the way, the protagonist curses Huja Karuna. He warns that they need to go to Earth to stop the rage virus, and Yudu Rinai says they're already heading there. She thinks that the test they set for humanity wasn't a fair chance, but a one-sided defeat for them. She questions if this is really justice. The light emanates in the sky, and the protagonists appear on Earth. The protagonist heals his companions, asking if they're okay. He feels sorry, saying this is all his fault. Then he notices an enraged human beside him. He easily dodges the bite, wondering what the hell this is now. Another 100 monsters charge toward them. The protagonist thinks that the first test from the constellation of Wrath was a zombie apocalypse. Humans were a life with a purpose that also explores it. In biological terms, they are animals belonging to the primate order and the hominidae family, with high intelligence characterized by the use of tools and language. And they are social animals who create complex societal structures for interaction. If humanity lost its intelligence and all of society collapsed, you couldn't call them human. A new name for them was zombie, and so because of the rage virus, humanity had turned into zombies. The girls wonder what he was talking about. Some zombies charge toward Yunye, but Tai-in steps in front of her. He says this shouldn't be happening and activates his electric current ability. The zombies start getting electrocuted and begin to panic. The protagonist says this is how you handle zombies, by turning them back to normal. Then he asks if Yunye was okay. The girl asks what the hell he was doing and if he thinks this is all a game. The protagonist tells her not to come at him again with ridiculous explanations. But she slaps the protagonist across the face, injuring him. Then she questions if he was out of his mind, because he should have some idea of how many times they almost lost their lives for being near him. The protagonist says he always wanted to save her, but the girl complains that he shouldn't have brought her to a place like this in the first place. Back in that hell, they were burning, thinking they didn't want to lose their lives so pathetically without seeing their parents' faces again. She questions if he has any idea how horrible that was, since he clearly doesn't want to experience it himself. If this was all for his idea of fun, he could go to hell with it. They were just tools to prove his abilities, and everything could be solved if he just did it alone or actually saved them. She questions if this was his idea of companions since he had taken people's lives without a second thought, and that couldn't be fun either. The protagonist says that's how zombie stories go, and Yunye screams, questioning what the hell he was talking about, because he said they were infected with some kind of virus, which means they can be cured. So she tells the protagonist to save all of them. Tai-in is silent for a few seconds. He asks if she thinks he's crazy enough to take all these people's lives. She understood it all. He just paralyzed them with an electric shock, and they would be cured if he treated them. But he doesn't want to be criticized for always using the same pattern, where the protagonist always defeats any enemy that appears. The girls wonder what the hell he was talking about. The protagonist tells her not to worry. No matter how annoying it gets, he wouldn't go any further, until Yunye warns him about a zombie behind him. Tae-in turns around, saying the zombie scared him with that bite. He then uses magic to trap it in midair, commenting that it really did scare him. Eunye asks if the protagonist will become a zombie, but Tae-in tells her not to worry, since it was just a small virus. Then he uses his splendid healing ability, but he notices that the wound isn't regenerating. He wonders what could be happening, and tries to use the Seraphim's blessing, but again, there's no result, and Yudorinai says, there's no choice. If the virus has the power of the constellations, he can't interfere, and must cut off his arm before he's consumed by rage. But the protagonist questions what she's talking about, saying he's already feeling angry. Yudu Renai activates her ability on her sword, but the protagonist begs her not to do it. He thought he was supposed to be the protagonist, but this doesn't make any sense. Just because he was too strong, it was hard to advance the story, and this was just a forced balancing patch to fix things. Then he screams that he's so angry. The other zombies are drawn to him. Yudu-Rinai says she regrets it has come to this, but Cheon-ma interrupts, telling her not to take his life. He needs to turn her back to normal first, and Iljin agrees. Layla warns that the zombies were coming, and Yudo-Rinai tells Cheon-ma to get out of the way for the sake of the cosmic order. The cultivator gets ready to confront them, but Yunye says there's no time for that, and they need to get somewhere safe before the pervert transforms even more. Iljin asks how they can get anywhere else with this horde of zombies, and the girl says it was fine. She asks if Yudu Rinai could help them get to another safe place. The zombies continue to approach, so the protagonists end up at the school. Yudu Rinai traps him in a chair using her ethereal prison. The girls wonder what to do now that they've trapped him like they were supposed to. Layla says she feels bad for Tai-in, and that if they take Hujikaruna's life now, the virus should disappear too. Yudu Rinai replies that it's impossible. Since they are protected by the cosmic order, the constellations cannot lose their lives. There had to be another way to annihilate them. Cheon-ma says that looking at him, the protagonist was in a delirious state, and she could solve it with acupuncture. She then touches several of his vital points. The protagonist spits up a lot of blood because of this, and Cheon-ma is left confused. Iljin says that this guy was a complete mess. Yudu Rinai questions if they really think the power of a constellation can be solved with tricks like that. But Tai-in says he feels alive because the blood flow to his brain was improving. Yudu Rinai is surprised by this, and Cheon-ma gloats. Layla tells the protagonist to come back to his senses, but Tai-in replies that there's no time and he must lose his mind again. He wonders what the point was of making a protagonist like this if he can't use any of his abilities. Then he starts to think about the author's intention, until he realizes something. He says he understands how the next episode is going to go. He warns them that he is going to lose his life. In an apocalypse manhwa, another protagonist yells for everyone to go on ahead. A blonde girl complains that they promised to stay together until the end, but the green-haired guy says he was wrong because he had been bitten earlier. He feels sorry and tells her to be careful. The girl denies it, and the manhwa chapter ends. Tae-in cries, saying that even though the sacrifice was obvious, the tears still came. He's going to leave 10 stars and a comment too. He says that this kind of altruism and spirit of sacrifice can't even be taught in schools. Then he goes right back to eating his ramen. Back in the present, Tae-in thinks he can do it and says that before he changes, he'll sacrifice himself for everyone. The girls question this. The protagonist continues that it was the end for the protagonist before he turns into a zombie, but Layla calls him out. She asks why exactly he would sacrifice himself when there were so many strong people around him. Tae-in tries to answer, but Yoon-ye says he was doing it again. He should stop trying to sacrifice himself, because they aren't fools who can't do anything without help, and the protagonist thinks this wasn't the right development. But now, thinking about it, it was true. They are strong enough that the zombies aren't scary. Since all of humanity had been infected, there was no fun in meeting new survivors. As long as it's to defeat the zombies, they should just agree to take everyone's lives. He needs to figure out the episode's direction before he loses his mind again. Layla starts to feel hungry, and Cheon-ma says she hasn't eaten anything all day. Yoon-ye says she was also hungry in this situation, but they all start looking at Iljin. He screams for them not to do this to him. Cheon-ma tells him to sacrifice himself as emergency food, but Iljin tells them not to get close. They should wait a moment and follow him. Cheon-ma says she understood, and Iljin tells them to look, because they had enough hamburger buns for everyone to eat. Yoon-ye asks how they can eat them. Cheon-ma just suggests opening and eating them, and the girl comments that for some reason, the hamburger goes out the other way halfway through. Layla asks if Iljin would forgive them for eating his friends, but the hamburger says they weren't his friends, so the three girls eat the hamburger. For those who came from medieval European and ancient Chinese worlds, the taste of Korean food was addictive. Inside the room, Yoo Do-rinai asks how he was doing. Tae-in thanks her for restraining him. Yoo Do-rinai replies that it's not necessary, and she shouldn't have taken him to see Huja Karuna, because now he'll suffer until he loses his life. The protagonist wonders what he should do. The constellation says she wouldn't let him become like this, because what they witnessed due to the constellations wasn't fair, and she wants to make it right. Tae-in thanks her for realizing this. Yoo Do-rinai says he can endure it a little longer, but there must be a way to solve the situation, and he has valuable companions who would help with that. The girls walk in, saying the burger was delicious and would be even better heated up in the microwave. The two remain silent in the room, but Tae-in explodes in rage, shouting that this stuff was frustrating. Yoo Do-rinai suppresses him, warning that he'll lose his sanity again, and his resistance is getting stronger. Cheon-ma says it seems hopeless, but she needs this guy to return to her original form. Ever since he put her in this state, her abilities aren't the same, and with her body changed, it's hard to control the flow of her energy, until she senses something from far away. She announces she can feel energy from a nearby house, the energy of someone who hasn't been consumed by rage. Yoo Do-rinai says that's impossible, since all living beings were infected by the rage virus, and her sensory ability has never been wrong. Cheon-ma walks to the window, saying she's incorrect, because there's a perfect human 2 kilometers away, heading in her direction, and if you listen carefully, you can even hear her breathing. Yoo Do-rinai starts to focus and wonders what that presence is. Layla asks what she said about other survivors outside, and Yoon-ye explains that the infected are alive too. Yoo Do-rinai says it's getting closer, but she doesn't know what it is. Layla says that person might be in danger. Tae-in's rage intensifies, and the constellation continues to suppress him. She warns that his power rivals that of a cosmic creature. At this rate, the pervert will destroy the Earth all by himself, so she has to stay here to restrain him. They should handle this themselves. Cheon-ma flies through the window with Iljin in her arms. Layla calls out to her, and Eun-ye asks if they're just going to leave like that, and if it will be okay for just the two of them to go. Cheon-ma leaps through the city with her jumping powers. Iljin asks why she's taking him along, and Cheon-ma says he understands this world, and he's light, so the burger thinks they need him. Cheon-ma lands in front of a house, commenting that she can feel the energy of a peaceful person up there. Iljin says he wasn't worried about zombies as long as it was Miss Cheon-ma. He wonders if they'll open the door, since the world has changed, and that's probably not the main entrance. Cheon-ma moves forward, saying she doesn't know which floor it is, so she enters a room through the window. Iljin says he has no idea how they did that. Cheon-ma looks around the house, wondering if someone really lives there. She can hear the breathing of someone not consumed by rage coming from behind a door. She opens the door and is surprised. Iljin wonders what he's looking at, with a room filled with posters of other webtoons. Cheon-ma asks what these talismans are, but Iljin says they're just strange enough to look like them. Then, the person in bed stirs. Cheon-ma readies her cultivator energy, but Iljin tells her to wait. That person gets out of bed. It's a girl who just woke up. Iljin falls in love instantly, saying she's an incredibly extraordinary beauty. Cheon-ma throws him to the ground, calling him disgraceful. The girl standing there is surprised, because a bouncing hamburger and a celestial spirit girl are the kind of things that only happen in a manhwa. They are both surprised, thinking she's just like Tai-in. The girl comments that it's like a scene from a webtoon. Cheon-ma asks if all the people in this country are like this, and Iljin says no. The girl celebrates seeing a female Cheon-ma talking to a hamburger. Then she introduces herself as Lee Nara. Iljin asks if she hasn't been to school lately. Cheon-ma asks if they know each other, but the burger explains she's quite famous. She had a nickname at school. In a classroom, a teacher hands out tests, telling the class president to give Nara her test since she's sleeping. The class president wonders about it. She's surprised because she's never seen her awake, yet she gets top marks on every test. Iljin says she was the #1 sleepy student. She was just sleeping through all of school, and Lee Nara confirms it, but she says today was the school's foundation day, and Iljin says that's why no one went to school. Cheon-ma says so she was sleeping while gates opened and monsters came out. The girl comments that this must be a dream with stories about hunters and portals. Cheon-ma grabs her arm, telling her they should go. Nara asks to be put down, saying she must be tired, and the cultivator says she really does seem like Tai-in. Then they fly toward the school as a figure watches from afar, commenting that this is very interesting. Yoon-ye looks out the window, commenting that they are coming. Cheon-ma lands at the school and announces she brought her and explained the situation on the way. Lee Nara says her heart is racing, but she notices there are only beautiful people in the classroom. Yoon-ye recognizes Lee Nara, and the girl says it's a pleasure to meet her. Layla sighs, saying this is bad because Tae-in's situation is getting worse. Yudurinai says they can still stop it, but at this point, taking his life is the only option. Lee Nara recognizes the protagonist tied up. Iljin asks if she knows the pervert too, and the girl says Tai-in probably doesn't remember her. You could say they're childhood friends. He was the one who introduced her to manhwas. Lee Nara says it must be a dream for Tai-in to appear in it. Yudurinai asks how she wasn't affected by the virus. The girl says she must be the constellation of justice and heard about her on the way. She thinks it must be because she's the owner of the dream. Yoon-ye says she seems confused about things, and Lee Nara says she can tell just by the way her crush appeared in this dream. It was a dream made for just the two of them. The protagonist loses his mind and goes berserk, and when nobody knows what to do, the girl shows up. Yoon-ye asks what she just said, and what she's doing now as Nara hugs Tai-in. She asks her love to stop this, because it's alright since it's her, and he should remember. Yudurinai tells her to get back because he's dangerous, but the girl strikes her own eyes, crying as she tells him to forget the hard times, that everything will be alright. The tears keep streaming down and fall onto the protagonist's face. One of them drips on his forehead and begins to purify the rage virus. Nara continues to hug him. Cheon-ma wonders what she's seeing, and Iljin says this scene looks familiar, wanting to know where he's seen it before. Yudurinai thinks there's no way this could have happened. Nara begins to regenerate the protagonist with her affection. Tai-in wakes up, completely lost. The girl says this is how you bring the protagonist back. A sincere hug and tears from his childhood friend. The protagonist just asks who she is. Nara gets embarrassed and introduces herself. Then Tai-in recognizes her as the girl who sleeps in class. Cheon-ma notices Layla is going crazy with rage. Yudurinai explains that this girl managed to cure him. Tae-in sums it up. This girl, who isn't even a constellation, just suddenly appeared and fixed everything. He heard about a hug and tears from a childhood friend before. It must be something on that level, taking on the role of the girl in love with him. All the other group members think he's back. But anyway, the protagonist thanks her. That outfit must be strange, so he tells her to put on his shirt. Nara thinks that she knows it's a dream, but she can't even look him in the eyes. So the protagonist adds her to the group too, assigning her the support role. They need a smart girl like her, and she must be the key to advancing in the Huja Karuna tutorial. Yudurinai thinks that a human is neutralizing the power of a constellation and might be more dangerous than the pervert. The protagonist says that, as expected, there's no other way but to deal with that bastard, and Nara comments that it's a very detailed dream. Yoon-ye tells her it's not a dream, and the fate of the Earth really depends on them. Nara says she understands. The protagonist says they must return to Huja Karuna's home, but Yudurinai says if they go like this, they'll just repeat their previous failure. Tai-in wonders what they should do since he's not an opponent they can beat in a fight. Nara asks what the situation is and if they can explain it to her too. The protagonist looks at her, thinking that of all the people he knows, she was the smartest. He's going to explain everything now, so they must come up with a strategy. Far away, in another part of the city, A light arrives at Hooja Karuna's home. He starts to laugh, saying it was annoying because he came back on his own. He asks how their numbers grew by 1 person. Tai-in thanks him. He'd been a real pain, but this was enough for now. Hooja Karuna gets angry and lunges at him, saying he's getting pissed. The fist closes in on the protagonist, but he just cracks a smile. An explosion erupts in that domain. The girls create a barrier to block the aftershock. Hooja Karuna is surprised by this, because his fist didn't even touch Tai-in's face. All thanks to Yudo Renai, who had used the protection of justice. The protagonist says they should raise the tension once more, irritating Hooja Karuna. The constellation asks what the hell Yudo Renai is doing, siding with these insects to take down a constellation like him. But she replies that's not it. She came here to protect him. Hooja Karuna asks what kind of nonsense that is, striking again. Tai-in says that with the protection of justice by his side, he can match the power of a constellation. Hooja Karuna laughs, saying how annoying this is. His necklace begins to glow as his powers increase. The protagonist thinks this is the trigger for his second phase, which appeared before. Hooja Karuna asks if he's saying he can rival a constellation. He should have come to compare his own power, not just that of cosmic beings. Then he lands a punch on the protagonist and shatters the barrier. Everything was peaceful but suddenly explodes. Tai-in is sent flying, and Yudo Renai takes the damage. The girl calls out to her friend and Hooja Karuna sighs. Then Yudo Renai questions how he became strong enough to break her authority so easily, but Hooja Karuna replies that he didn't get any stronger. Then he calls them all insects, asking if they'd believe him if he said he's been holding back his rage. Having been angry his whole life, he could never have anything because his rage ruined or broke everything. And what enraged him the most, ironically, was his anger at himself. The one who wanted to control his anger was himself. That's why he concentrated his rage into this artifact, the Amulet of Rage. He thinks it's time to let his anger go, releasing all his energy as far as he can. Eun-ye asks what that is. All of Hooja Karuna's energy materializes into beasts. He crouches down and sends his creatures to take his life. Tai-in reflects that he believes in everyone there and in the best he can do, releasing stage 1 of Ascension. He uses Replica, saying there's no point in holding back, creating hundreds of copies of himself. Hooja Karuna laughs, telling the insect to do whatever he wants, since he'll be extinct today anyway. Yudo Renai makes a clean cut on one of the monsters, but it regenerates, growing 2 more heads. She remarks that this battle will be endless, and Lee Nara says their plan was doomed from the start. Yudo Renai uses a light spell, and Nara comments that they should go back and get Tai-in now. But the Constellation of Justice says she'd like that too, but someone has to protect them in the meantime, thinking it's her fault for not giving them this information sooner. She has to set things right, and so she charges forward, slicing the lava snake once more with all her strength. In addition, she uses her Cease Shine spell, but she ends up getting caught in a snake's bite. But Cheon Ma uses her Celestial Demon Seal to defeat the snake. She tells her to cut the crap about being the Constellation of Justice. Yudo Renai looks back, surprised, but she explains the opponent is a serpent of wrathful obsidian, manifested by the constellation's power, and Layla says she can fight too. Since they all received shared power from Tai-in, and have Yudo Renai's blessing, they have a chance. The constellation thinks that these life forms have a strong will to live. Hooja Karuna was wrong in his ideas, because humanity was the noblest of all the life forms they had created. Hooja Karuna lands a punch on Tai-in's face, shouting that he can't hide for much longer. All the protagonist's clones are destroyed by the hellish explosion. Tai-in thinks that he kept his main body far away, but it was dangerous, so he uses the exclusion skill. Hooja Karuna grabs a clone by the neck, saying he's being underestimated, but wants to know why there's no counterattack. The protagonist answers that it's because he doesn't want to fight him, cracking a smile. Hooja Karuna asks what he means, but the protagonist replies that constellations don't die anyway, so it would be an endless fight. And in that case, he's going to make Hooja Karuna his companion. Before all of this, at school, Yudo Renai says the idea makes sense. Lee Nara says it's a very good plan. Cheon Ma asks if it's possible to have leaders with a cosmic entity, and Iljin points out that Renai is also a cosmic being. Eun-ye asks what the pervert thinks about it. Tai-in answers, absolutely not. The girl questions why. Then the protagonist explains that making Hooja Karuna an ally seemed very strange. They aren't familiar with the ones they already have, and adding another character would just make things chaotic. Besides, the readers want a battle, and the girls ask what he's talking about. Cheon Ma says she's against this plan too, because that guy is a monster trying to wipe out all of humanity. She won't be satisfied until she takes his life with her own hands. but Yudorinai says that won't happen. Humans can never take the life of a constellation. Layla asks if Yudorinai could fight for them, but she explains that combat between constellations is forbidden. But if the plan is to make Huja Karuna an ally, it would allow them to use his strength. Tai-in tries to say he still doesn't want to, but Nara says if he has a better idea, he should just say it. The protagonist falls silent, trying to figure something out, but says that in that case he has no choice, asking Yudorinai to tell him everything she knows about Huja Karuna. Back in the present, the protagonist says he wants him as an ally, because he heard his star was special from the moment it was born, but Huja Karuna punches him in the face. The protagonist uses Mirage Advance, and says he became envious of everything that surrounds stars, remembering people saying he was the brightest, even among all the stars that were born. At that rate, he was going to become a constellation very quickly, but because of his innate nature, Huja Karuna asks who he thinks he is to judge him. The other stars say they don't want to be around him because he's vulgar and has a bad personality, causing trouble for everyone. Huja Karuna gets angry that everyone avoids him, until someone calls his name. Seikai says he truly values his consistency, so he would place him in the position of the constellation of Wrath and expects him to complete his mission for the sake of cosmic order, Huja Karuna thinks. So this is what it feels like to be acknowledged. Then he shouts that only now has he experienced such a terrible feeling, and it pisses him off. After that, he silently carried out his duties as a constellation. Huja Karuna calls him a bastard, punching Tai-in for being an insect acting like he knows something. The protagonist tells him to let all his anger out, because he will take it all. But he asks about it, saying he's an ally who won't break or leave. Huja Karuna thinks about this for a few seconds. Tai-in thinks, please let this work. I'm reaching my limit with this guy. Huja Karuna says he's the first person to ever say something like that to him. He's a pathetic insect. He wants to see if he'll really stick around. The protagonist thinks this is dangerous and that he's going to lose his life, until he notices the way it was written. Huja Karuna uses his hell explosion. On the other side, Layla strikes the multi-headed snake with her dagger. She pants heavily as the whole group stares at the serpent. Huja Karuna says it's been a long time since he released so much rage. This is very refreshing now. The protagonist says he doesn't need to thank him. Huja Karuna is impressed that he's still alive, wondering how he survived that when he had no cards left to play. Tai-in thinks this could be called the protagonist's plot armor in the story. He says he was actually doing fine, and Huja Karuna must know he was a good man deep down. The constellation says he was talking as if he knew everything all this time. Tai-in explains that he spread the rage virus to end humanity. But when he saw it with his own eyes, people were just angry, not hurting each other, since zombies don't fight each other in other stories. But when the uninfected were attacked, that's how the rage virus spread through their bodies too. And then he finally understood. The source of his rage was the desperation to find someone who understood his frustration, trying not to burn others, holding his frustration in alone for an unimaginable time, and now all of humanity understood him. That must have been really tough. He used to curse himself for his innate personality, wondering why he was like that, with a feeling that overwhelmed him as he tried to live a normal life like everyone else. He knows he could change himself, but it wouldn't be easy. But now he knows there's no point in bearing these thoughts alone. He's been through a lot, but now he has friends who appreciate his worth. So he asks Huja Karuna to become his companion. The constellation remains silent for a few seconds. He says that feeling this way now makes him really angry. Tai-in doesn't react to the blow, and he's thrown far away by Huja Karuna. The constellation says he doesn't need this and that he should die, hitting the protagonist over and over. Tai-in is slammed into the ground. Yudu Raine calls out to him as he hits the ground. Huja Karuna lunges forward to strike the protagonist again, hitting the ground instead. The constellation tells him to stop, and Layla calls out to her friend. Huja Karuna calls him a bastard, saying he can't get angry. Lee Nara heals him, and the protagonist says it was a classic scene. Yudorinai tells him to look around. Huja Karuna realizes where he is, and his eyes sparkle. He comments that it's a beautiful place. He says everything has frozen over and laughs as Tai-in asks what Huja Karuna wants. He asks if he'll become his companion, and extends his hand. Huja Karuna looks up and says that he'll accept. The protagonist says he made the right choice, and isn't a fan of the kind of story that has unfolded so far, but he was counting on him, until he notices he can't touch him, and Huja Karuna says he might not be able to join him after all. Yudorinai screams, not understanding what's happening. Huja Karuna explains that constellations are supposed to disappear when they lose their reason for existing. Now that he no longer has a target for his rage, he's vanishing. Tai-in asks what he's talking about, but Huja Karuna hands him the necklace, telling him to take it. This was his artifact, the Amulet of Rage, an object condensed from his rage over countless years. It will surely help him on his journey ahead. The protagonist asks what he's talking about, saying he needs to come with them. He then laughs, apologizing for calling him a worm all this time. He says that he finally formed an unbreakable bond only to disappear like this. He says he's very irritated by it. Tai-in calls Huja Karuna's name, but Yu Do-rinai's sword strikes his neck. The protagonist dodges, and she says she shouldn't have let him live. A constellation disappearing was a collapse event that had never happened in the cosmic order, and the scales calculated that he is a threat to the universe. The other group members shout for Rinai to wait a second. She prepares to make her final cut, replying that she's sorry, but someone grabs the sword, telling her to wait a second. Yu Do-rinai recognizes him as the constellation of amusement, Omoshiroi. The protagonist thinks he's a super strong guy with fox eyes. The girl asks what on earth Omoshiroi was doing there, but he tells her to calm down and listen. He can't believe Tai-in was trying to make Huja Karuna his ally, and congratulates him for getting his hands on the artifact of the Constellation of Wrath. But more importantly, there was a decree from the King of Constellations. He waves his hand, announcing his purpose, to perform the divine ceremony for the human Baion Tai-in. Yu Do-rinai gets irritated by this, and Yunya asks what it is. Omoshiroi summarizes that it's an invitation to become a constellation, and in his terms, it's more of a gathering of friends. The protagonist tells him not to make him laugh. He says they treat everyone like ingredients for their recipes, and were even trying to get rid of them. Omoshiroi tells him to relax, as not all constellations agree with that. They assigned these guys in the first place, which is strange, but he wants to know if he's sure about rejecting the ceremony, even if it benefits him. Tai-in quickly refuses and gives him a cold stare. Omoshiroi says that's what he thought. He had been watching for a long time, a transcendent being who values fun above all else. He asks how he, the constellation of amusement, could possibly ignore that. But it wasn't just him. The other constellations were also interested in the human's actions, especially after Huja Karuna's defeat. The protagonist tells him to get lost, but Omoshiroi says he's sorry, adding it would be incredible to see him so immersed in fun. He has sorted some things out with the King of Constellations. He'll report that Baion Tai-in refused the divine ceremony, but tells him to be prepared. From now on, all constellations, including the 12 houses of the zodiac, have become his enemies. The protagonist asks about the houses of the zodiac, and Omoshiroi confirms. He explains that among the countless constellations, there were the brightest stars appointed by the King of Constellations, the 12 most advanced, symbolizing constellations among them, and each one has the power to destroy all life in the universe. He points out that this means 12 invincible beings would become his enemies, but he can exclude one for now, since the constellation of justice had already taken his side. The protagonist asks if Yu Do-rinai was one of the 12 houses of the zodiac. She confirms, saying that before receiving the title of Constellation of Justice, her original name was Yu Do-rinai of Libra. She is currently the 7th of the 12 houses. The protagonist says he's been hanging out with such an incredible person. He asks if this mark is on all constellations, and Omoshiroi confirms, but says the pattern is different among them. But he had seen them fighting Huja Karuna, and says that, at this rate, she would soon lose her position as one of the 12 houses of the zodiac. The girl says the position isn't important to her. She just wants to preserve the order of the universe, and if needed, she would give up the position. Omoshiroi comments that she doesn't even like jokes. The protagonist asks if he has anything else to say, and the constellation wonders what he wants. He says that Tai-in is just like him, so he should entertain him, as he would entertain him in return. Cheonma says she was waiting for an opponent like him. She advances with her demonic energy, saying she's going to take his life. Omoshiroi asks her not to use such harsh words, because she was scaring him. Cheonma uses her strongest attack. Tai-in is surprised, and Omoshiroi asks if this is how it's done. He gives her a flick that destroys the entire dimension. Luckily, Yu Do-rinai manages to teleport them away as the planet explodes. During the teleport, she asks if Cheonma is okay, because without the protection of justice, she would have lost her life. The girl replies that losing her life fighting someone stronger would be fun. Omoshiroi appears in the teleport, saying he completely agrees. He asks where everyone is going, because as expected, humans are interesting. He questions why Tai-in is so angry since he saved his life earlier. The protagonist wonders to himself if he could have withstood Huja Karuna's attack because of him. Omoshiroi says he protects fun, and would protect him, making sure the other constellations don't gang up on him all at once. After all, he is Omoshiroi of Capricorn, the 10th of the 12 houses. And on top of that, he whispers something in the protagonist's ear. He says this looks fun and that he has high hopes for him, then places a flute in his hand. He tells him that if he wants to play with him, he just has to play the flute. He says goodbye and that he'll see him later. The protagonist looks at the flute in his hand, and just like that, they arrive back on Earth. near the school. Yoon-ye says that no matter how many times they do this, she still can't get used to it. The protagonist questions the pace of everything, since he didn't even have time to process what happened with Huja Karuna. Yudu Rinai apologizes for attacking him earlier. The protagonist tells her not to worry, but the girl says he endured a lot. She was arrogant, thinking she could pass judgment alone. She's returning to the sanctuary for instructions. Meanwhile, Cheon-ma asks to revert to her original form so she can train. Lee Nara asks what he's going to do now. He starts to think, and Iljin tells everyone to look. The group turns, observing the daily lives of the people. They were working their jobs. He comments that the rage virus is gone, and Iljin says that he really saved the world. Tai-in thinks for a few seconds and says the group is over. Iljin questions this, and he explains that everyone can go back to their normal lives. He still hasn't completed it on his own despite his title, and the hamburger asks what he's talking about. He says he used to do everything by himself, until the system screen appears in front of him, and Iljin asks why it's so sudden. Tai-in is surprised that he can also see it. His system displays a huge wall of text, and he says he doesn't read messages longer than 4 lines. Then it announces he will be penalized for eliminating Huja Karuna. He asks what kind of penalty, wondering if they'll take his powers or lock him in a special prison. Then the system says they are under special surveillance and he can no longer block constellations. He'll have to participate in their trials. The rest of the group gathers around to look. Tae-in asks if they can also see the status window, and the girl asks about a system, saying that when it mentions companions, it must be talking about them. The system confirms, and he says he'll take responsibility and handle it alone, so his friends should be left out of it. But the system tells him to stop being ridiculous. It tells him he has no idea how much trouble he's caused by acting like a servant, and that he must stop skipping texts longer than 4 lines. Tai-in asks if that's how a system is supposed to act. Yudurine says that a constellation like her must participate in other constellations' trials. Her system confirms, saying it was something for them to regret. But before that, since he overcame the trial of wrath, he will receive a reward. He is surprised by this, leaving him alone with his group, who were annoyed with him. The day passes. Tai-in kneels, apologizing and calling off the end of the group. He then asks them to stay with him. Cheon-ma says she's tired of this and maybe taking his life would solve everything, but Layla tells her to calm down. Yudu Rinai complains that this is a problem because they don't know when the next trial will happen, and they can't act separately. Yoon-ye apologizes to everyone, but even now all she wants is to see her parents as soon as possible, since she's going crazy worrying about them. Layla consoles her, and Lee Nara suggests they go to her house first. Tae-in thinks that he only protected his own parents but didn't consider the others. He says they should all go there, thinking they deserve some peace. At home, Yoon-ye runs into her mother's arms. She thanks the gods that she's okay. He excuses himself, and her mother calls her husband, telling him their daughter is back. Then Yoon-ye's father appears, saying there was chaos outside, and that he must have been the one who kept his daughter safe. He says it was something like that, thinking it sounds a bit presumptuous. But Yoon-ye's father just thanks him. Tai-in explains what happened. Her father says it's hard to believe, but he was truly amazing for saving humanity. He was very happy that Yoon-ye has a friend like him. He thinks about this, and Lee Nara asks if it's okay to wear these clothes. Yoon-ye confirms, since she can't keep wearing the ones the pervert gave her. Layla wonders if factories from this era were so clean and durable, while Yudu Rinai doesn't understand the concept of clothes. He asks if the clothes he made were bad. Yoon-ye says that at least they fit, and asks if Cheon-ma really doesn't want to wear them, but she replies that she'd rather go to hell than wear those clothes. Unya's mother says the food is ready, and asks her daughter to take it out of the oven. The food is brought to the table, and Tai-in is delighted, while Iljin asks if she can cook too. Layla says the place is very peaceful. The wife asks her husband to set the dining table in the living room. She wasn't expecting so many guests, but tells them to eat as much as they want and to ask for more if they'd like. Everyone is surprised by this. Layla thanks her for the food, and Cheon-ma asks what a fork is. He comments that the food is great, while Yoon-ye's father thinks that he eats well and will make a great son-in-law. Yoon-ye's mother explains that it's lasagna, her daughter's favorite dish. While the girl complains that she didn't make it thinking of him, Cheon-ma says she could be a professional chef, and Lee Nara thinks she's a tsundere. The girl says that when she was younger, she dreamed of becoming a chef, so she prepared this with great care. Everyone shares a wonderful meal, talking and interacting with each other. Iljin wonders if it tastes better because they're eating together. Time passes and the meal ends, with everyone feeling full. Tai-in thanks her for the meal and says she's an excellent cook, and Yoonya's mother thanks him, until a voice speaks up, saying it's a bit salty for their taste. Tai-in asks how long she's been there, and Yudu Rinai recognizes her. She says it's the constellation of cuisine Oishiku-nare, who replies that she appreciates the recognition. He asks why she appeared so suddenly, and Oishiku-nare replies that it's an obvious question. She came to show them the spicy flavor of the trials. Tai-in asks if they're going to fight there, and tells Yunye's father to get behind him, but Oishiku-nare says no, as she's not that kind of constellation. She has always been curious about the meals enjoyed by the beings that constellations create. Her trial for him is to create a dish that satisfies her tastes, using ingredients they find and cook themselves. Tai-in asks about having another trial, and why he should do it. Oishiku-nare replies that he should consider himself lucky, because if it weren't for Omoshiroi of Fun's suggestion, he and all of humanity would have been wiped out. If he fails her trial, or if the others come, humanity's end is inevitable. She gives him 1 week to prepare and tells him to notify her through the system when he's ready, then bids them farewell. She vanishes from the room. Yunya's mother asks what that was, and the girl questions why they have to cook for constellations. He thinks that this isn't something his powers can handle, until he realizes something a moment later. He tells Yunya's father and mother that they have to leave again to save the world. The father says he's counting on him for the future of humanity and his daughter, and the girl yells at her father for saying that. Elsewhere, Yunya asks what the plan is now. Tai-in remembers when he summoned Lei Layla, and Yunya remembers too. He says he'll summon someone who fits the criteria from within his dimension, but for now, they can go to a suitable dimension. The girl asks what that's supposed to mean. He explains that he will teleport everyone to a dimension with the best ingredients from across all of space and time. He teleports his friends to a sunny place. He opens his eyes. Cheonma asks where he brought them this time. While Iljin is impressed and wants to know what that thing in front of him is, he asks what else it could be, other than a dragon, which will be the start of their journey with the group to other worlds. The dragon lets out a roar in front of the group. Lee Nara panics while Lei Layla and Yunya complain about it being another big monster. That dragon starts breathing fire towards the group. He says there are things he needs to handle, taking a full blast from a dragon, which he blocks with ease. Tai-in complains that it's too easy and prepares to attack. He exterminates the dragon with a flick of his finger, saying his power control is flawed. He uses the ability to turn back time. The dragon is completely confused by this, but he says he would really appreciate taming a dragon. The monster asks him to wait a second before taking its life. It takes on a human form and opens its eyes with sadness. He apologizes and begs to have his life spared, while Tai-in complains that his expression doesn't match his words. The dragon introduces himself as Dekasos, the 14th guardian of the ancient forest. He appeared suddenly and looked dangerous. Tai-in says it was anticlimactic, and Dekasos asks if he's a hero. The protagonist confirms he is, a student who fell from another world, destined to be a hero. Dekasos asks if he is the child of the prophecy, and Tai-in notes that this is indeed the setup. The dragon then explains that 50,000 years have passed since a prophecy was created in the Dragon Clan, and passed down through generations. 5 days from now, 2 moons will align. 7 strangers were supposed to arrive at the Pillar of Light, but there were only 6 of them. The protagonist says he understands, so basically, they have to do this and save the world from the Demon King. Dekasos remarks that he seems to know the prophecy's content. Tai-in tells him to forget about it, and asks what the most delicious thing in this world is. The dragon is left completely confused. The day passes, and the protagonist summarizes that this continent, Aojoguni, has 4 great delicacies. A legendary flower from the world tree that blooms once every 1,000 years. Eating it fills you with vitality for 10 years. The spines of a lava sea urchin, a creature born from the wars of the past. Dragon eggs, considered the finest fantasy ingredient among them. The hidden leg meat of the paradise rabbit. Those were the 4 ingredients. Tai-in asks if he could give him his eggs since he's a dragon, but Dekasos calls him very rude. The protagonist asks why they don't just summon all of them right here, right now. He begins the spell to create all the ingredients, but Dekasos stops him. He says that he can't summon those things here and now, but Tai-in argues they're just ingredients. The dragon explains that the lava sea urchin lives deep in the underworld cavern beneath the Demon King's castle, surviving under immense lava pressure. If he were to summon such a creature to a place like this, the pressure difference would cause an instant explosion. The protagonist then asks about summoning the other ingredients, but Dekasos replies that they're called rare for a reason. The world tree hasn't bloomed in over 30 years. The paradise rabbit was hunted for its unique flavor and is now extinct. Besides, he will never give up his eggs. Tai-in tells him to calm down, and the dragon questions why they're even looking for these things in the first place, asking if they can even call themselves a hero's party. The protagonist replies that they're trying to save the world their own way, and he doesn't expect the dragon to understand, but he would sincerely appreciate his help. Dikasos thinks to himself that this guy is serious. He then closes his eyes, saying that if he is the boy from the prophecy, it's his duty to help. First, they must reach the World Tree and find the lava sea urchin. The elves who serve the World Tree could be of great help. For the lava sea urchin, he'll need to dig through the underworld caverns and search the lava, and he might encounter the Demon King's army in the process. But with his strength, it should be easy. He asks if they should find these two ingredients first. The protagonist replies that it sounds good, and that they'll split into two groups. Nara asks which group he'll be in. Tai-in says he'll go with both, splitting himself into two clones. Dikasos questions this, and Tai-in mutters to himself that in these situations, one side usually messes up and causes trouble. The World Tree team was Yun-Ye, Lei Lyra, Nara, and Dikasos, while the Demon King's castle team would be Iljin, Cheonma, and Yudarinai. The World Tree group advances through the forest. The protagonist then asks why he didn't go to the Demon King's castle and came here instead. Dikasos replies that the Demon King is scary, but Tai-in yells that his expression doesn't match his words at all. He then announces they've arrived at the city of the elves who protect the World Tree. This was the city of Silbenheil. Nara comments on its beauty, and the protagonist notes that the tree is like something out of a fantasy inspired by Norse mythology. Suddenly, magic arrows fly in their direction, but he blocks them with a wave of his hand and remarks that it's quite a unique welcome. An elf appeared, sneering that they were tricky humans bold enough to step foot in the World Tree realm. He warned them not to even think about returning alive. Dikasos told them to stop, while Tai-in just commented on how cute it was seeing all the elves together. Suddenly, one of the elves recognized the dragon's voice. The dragon revealed that Tai-in was the child of prophecy. The elves scoffed, claiming it was impossible for a mere human to be the prophesied child. Tai-in felt offended at being called mere. The elf descended from the tree, insisting his pathetic race could never produce the child of prophecy, and Dikasos must be wrong. Tai-in asked if they knew each other. Dikasos explained this was Beldor, the captain of the guard and prince of the elves. He held all decision-making power, and they needed to win him over somehow despite his personality. Beldor ranted that humans were just dirty, stupid, and vulgar. Then he noticed Lei Layla in the group, radiating frightening beauty. The elf immediately fell in love with her. Meanwhile, at the Demon King's castle, Tai-in commented that the atmosphere was so intense it made his heart race. Inside his home, the Demon King watched them. He commented that this was very interesting. Back in Sylvestia, the elves served food to the group. Nara thanked them for the meal, and Tai-in asked if this was what they called a dessert stomach. Edie Lei Layla asked what kind of fruit it was because it was delicious. Beldor said it was a crisp treat, happy that she enjoyed it. Dikasos noted that even hostile Beldor was treating humans kindly. This moment would go down in history. The elf asked if she was looking for something, as the elves would do their best to help the woman of prophecy. Tai-in thanked the elf prince, grabbing his hand, explaining they were there to find the World Tree's flower. Beldor ordered him to remove his dirty hands. The protagonist got irritated, and Nara tried to calm him down. Beldor explained that if they wanted the World Tree's flower, there were none left. It wouldn't bloom again for 30 years. Lei Layla asked if there really wasn't another way. Tai-in suggested that if he intervened with the World Tree, it might be possible. The elves drew their weapons instantly. Dikasos told them to stand down, while the elves demanded to know if they were there to loot the tree. The dragon warned the protagonist that the tree was a symbol of faith, and he needed to watch his words. Tai-in apologized, but insisted he couldn't do nothing while his world was being destroyed without it. Beldor questioned if he was truly the hero of prophecy. Lei Layla begged, wanting to know if there really was no other option. The elves were captivated by her beauty. Beldor faked a cough to shift the mood. He advised that their great sage, the Elder, might know something. Upon meeting the old man, he told them they had already eaten all the World Tree flowers. It had bloomed over 1,000 years ago, and he wondered how they expected to find one now. He suggested they wait a moment. Perhaps if they lived another 30 years, they might see it bloom. Tai-in questioned if that was possible, but Nara reminded them that Oisich Nare gave them a 1-week deadline. The old man recounted that when he was young, he had the chance to drink tea made from World Tree petals. After 700 years, he still remembered the taste. It was a divine flavor, as if the forest of vitality had blessed him. He imagined how fresh a flower must be, questioning if the humans were envious. Yunya questioned if he really was the wisest elf. Therianel warned them not to think about approaching the tree, as they didn't even know if they were chosen. He pointed out his staff was made from a branch of the World Tree. He told Tai-in to take a good look before leaving, adding that if he was alive in 30 years, he was free to visit. Beldor remarked that, as expected of the elder, he was the one who taught them how to politely refuse people. Dikassos complained that wasn't really an achievement. The old man asked if the protagonist had never seen anything like his staff. Tae-in just snatched the staff from the old man's hand. Beldor demanded to know what he was doing, and Unye said he couldn't just steal a staff like that. The protagonist activated the lightning growth ability. Suddenly, the staff began to bloom. Dikassos wondered why this was happening. The protagonist said since they loved the world tree so much, it would be good if they had another one of the same size. Tamuriel asked how this was possible. The protagonist explained that only one blooms every 1,000 years. Now, there were multiple flowers atop the tree. The elves rejoiced at the sight, glorifying the hero of prophecy for saving their race. Tai-in said, skipping 6,000 years was one thing, but 1,000 years was no big deal. Tamuriel fell to the ground, calling it legendary. He had witnessed a miracle of the gods. The protagonist confirmed they secured the World Tree seed and wondered how the Demon King team was doing. On the other side, Kim Il-jin destroyed a demon with his charge. The demon commented it was unbelievable. The fourth celestial king, Baratulinel, had been defeated by someone like him. Kim Il-jin retorted that it was disappointing to be the Demon King's gatekeeper. Tai-in commented that he really was charismatic, and Il-jin was happy for the praise. The girls just watched without reacting until Tai-in celebrated the gate opening. A man spoke up, noting that even Baratulinel, who could easily handle 10 dragons alone, had been defeated quickly. This was impressive to Yakam, one of the 4 celestial kings, but he was the weakest of them all. Tae-in finished the sentence for him. He added that he totally knew about the demon's disgrace. Yakam said it was interesting, but he couldn't maintain confidence against him. Tai-in joked that the guy was baring his teeth just trying not to be scared. Cheon-ma prepared her powers, saying it was fun, and told them to go ahead. The protagonist warned her not to say that so casually. It was basically a death wish spell. Yakam claimed these fools were ignoring him and activated the power in his hand, but Cheon-ma retaliated with a cutting attack from her own power. Only the demonic arm remained. Cheon-ma stated he shouldn't have irritated her. Even the demon lord shouldn't be that bad. Upon entering the castle, Tae-in commented that it was kind of dark. He questioned if the next celestial king was there. Suddenly, they heard a very loud sound. A woman with chains appeared, saying it was good to meet her dear brother. He had made it all the way to the Demon King's castle, but this was as far as he would get. She was the Scythe of Chains, but got hit by Cheon-ma on the head. The woman was defeated. The girl questioned what was up with these people. She felt so bored she could die. It was an existential crisis, finding trivial life forms created by constellations. The protagonist noted it seemed only cosmic entities could challenge them now, until a voice laughed, asking if that was it. The protagonist was surprised to see the girl's body stand up. The other celestial kings also rose in zombie forms. Valigetta declared this was her power as the strongest celestial king, the zombie army. They had to kneel before her overwhelming strength. The protagonist realized it was a trick where she revived them, no matter how many times they were killed. He activated simultaneous conjuration. A dimensional exile portal formed above and below Valigetta. The same thing happened to the other celestial kings, and the man questioned how that was fair. Tai-in closed the portals, suggesting perhaps they could find peace there. He wondered if they could go to the lava ocean below the underground cave now, and the rest of the group agreed that was what they came for. They continued walking through the castle non-stop, but the protagonist wondered if this wasn't the right way to the cave. He wanted to know if the demon lord had just appeared, and if they should just deal with him quickly too, but Yudo Rinai ordered them to wait a moment. The demon lord ordered them to kneel. The protagonist's group repeated the action. Tai-in wondered what this was all about, and Yudo Rinai questioned how he was there. The demon lord replied that it was obvious. After all, this was his castle, being the constellation of war, Zeta Ichoros. Moments ago, when they were heading to the castle, Dikassos had decided to explain the Celestial Kings. Tai-in said spoilers weren't fun, and Kim Il-jin remarked he must be surprised at how strange the hero was. Then the dragon says he only needs one thing: to warn them that the Demon King was truly strong. For thousands of years, countless heroes tested their strength and challenged the Demon King, but none had ever defeated him. Besides being strong, for some reason, he doesn't personally attack the human realm. Tai-in remarks that they are always like that, but it was okay because he would deal with it somehow. Back in the present, he was kneeling on the ground. Tai-in asks how Yudo Rinai knows him. The girl explains that he was the strongest constellation. He ended the ancient constellation wars with sheer combat power and secured a position among the 12. He was the one who caused the creation of the law prohibiting combat between constellations. The protagonist questions why someone like that was playing at being a demon king. Zeta answers that it's simply because he loves war. war. But thanks to the decision of the Council of Constellations, he cannot participate in wars directly. So, he created a planet where countless factions were engaged in endless conflict. Watching the life forms he created go to war, he was truly satisfied. Furthermore, among the life forms that withstood the trials of war, he was able to harvest negentropy stronger than in any other dimension, so he declared himself Demon King and created this dimension. Tae-in asks if he threatens lives like that too, because he was going to get rid of him, standing up as he said it. Zeta says he can defy his orders. The reward for overcoming Huja Karuna's test, Ascension Level 2, had been unlocked. The protagonist activates his Divine Verdict ability, and Yu Rinai shouts that this was too much. Dozens of angels advance towards Zeta, but he just changes the form of his weapon into a shield. Thus, he manages to defend against the blows. Zeta questions if that was the strongest ability of the light attribute. That certainly had been impressive, as it destroyed the rest of the world. Then he orders his weapon to become a halberd, for he was waiting for a fight with the hero of prophecy. He was intrigued by what he heard about a human who could annihilate a constellation, and that this hero of prophecy was standing right in front of him. So he must see this, but Yudurinai tells him to wait, because currently, they were under the test of the constellation of gastronomy, and he shouldn't interfere. Zeta says he had no intention of doing so, but it was they who invaded his castle. But now that she mentioned it, it reminded him of something, that interesting reminder that guy gave. In the past, Omoshiroi called all the constellations and said they were interested in the new awakened. They want to give tests and gain the best negentropy from him. But no matter how strong they are, if they all attack at once, humanity will be wiped out in an instant, so they must make it fair, starting with the constellations that express themselves first, and not just because he spoke first. Questioning if anyone had any objections, the constellations agree out of fear of Omoshiroi. Zeta says that way his turn was pushed back, and he was number 389 in line. Yudurinai says they were there just to find ingredients from this dimension. Zeta says that as master of the dimension he can create anything, so they just need to speak up. The two look at each other. The protagonist asks for lava sea thorns, and Zeta asks how many they need. Tae-in asks for as many as possible, and the constellation accepts, creating dozens of lava sea thorns. He asks if there is anything else they need. Tae-in asks if he had dragon eggs and paradise rabbits as well. Then dozens are created in front of the group. He wonders what kind of cheat this is, but Zeta tells him to hurry up and complete the tests, then face him properly. The protagonist thinks for a few seconds and then smiles, agreeing. He will return someday to propose a duel. Kim Il-jin says that the Demon King was actually very kind. Zeta tells him not to lose his life, but Tae-in asks him to just wait. Back in the land of the elves, the protagonist comments that he was angry, thinking that he only just discovered something so delicious made him furious. The others also cry while eating the flowers. Layla says it was so good raw and tries to imagine the taste if prepared properly, until the other group arrives there. They ask what that was, and Dakaso says they should be extinct. Tae-in's clone questions if he got them all at once, wanting to know where he found one of those. Then he greets the original Tae-in. Dakaso's comments that so many rare ingredients were gathered in the same place. He wonders if he really defeated the Demon Lord, and Themuriel comments that it was expected of the hero of prophecy. Cheon-ma cries while eating the world tree flower, and Layla plays with a rabbit. The elves start lifting Tae-in, calling him the hero of prophecy. He wonders if they think he defeated the Demon Lord. He was just going to do that someday. Yunya questions how they could cook this. Themuriel approaches, questioning why she was looking at him, since he only knew history, not cooking. The other girls look at Yunya, who responds that she has never seen these ingredients before. Dakaso suggests visiting the best chef in Ochukoni. He isn't sure, but the royal chef should be able to handle any type of meal imaginable. Yu Durinai says that makes sense, and Tae-in agrees it's a good idea. So they must go there now. Dakasos questions why he was looking at him. The group flies on the dragon's back while Cheon-ma and Yudurinai go alone. Tae-in says they must head toward the palace. In a village in the kingdom, a father and son comment that an immense bird was passing in the sky, but those were things that only existed in legends. Until someone shouts that it was neither, with Dakasos landing in front of the family. Tae-in says it was a super dragon, wanting to know if this was the capital of Achiogunia, Aoiabni. This place really looks like another world. Dakaso says that from now on, he's on his own because he doesn't want to meet the king of this country. He warns him to be careful as well, but he remembers no spoilers and says he'll understand when he meets him. Tai-in thanks Dakasos for his help, saying they should meet again. The dragon says it was an honor to help the hero of prophecy, even briefly, so they shouldn't meet again. The protagonist asks the citizens for permission to take the cart, while the kid tells them to take whatever they want. Then they walk into the city while Kim Il-jin announces that it was the hero's group passing through. Layla complains that everyone was staring at them, but someone stops the group, calling out to them, ordering them to hand over everything they have. The protagonist says it was a classic. Nara completes the thought. Some bandits trying to pick a fight with the hero's group. The bandits question what they were talking about and say they should hand over everything right away, until a bandit with an axe says that Layla is very beautiful. Another bandit says he liked Cheon-ma, but she looks at him as if she were going to take his life. The protagonist tells them not to take lives. Then that bandit questions what he was talking about until Cheon-ma's attack approaches, dealing with that whole group with extreme ease. She comments that perhaps she should give up on everything and reincarnate. People comment that they just dealt with the whole gang in one move, and that he must really be the hero of prophecy, shouting and glorifying the group as they pass. Taein says they should release some of the world tree flowers. People continue glorifying the protagonist for this. Finally, at the royal castle, a servant calls out to his majesty, warning that a self-proclaimed hero of prophecy was asking for an audience. The king grabs a chicken drumstick and says it was ridiculous, so he should send them away. That servant says they brought the 4 great delicacies of the world. Then Tom changes his mind, advising that in that case he should let them enter immediately. Tae-in enters the room, apologizing for the intrusion. Tom laughs and questions what brings him there. The protagonist explains that he would like to borrow the royal chef for a short time, thinking that the king had the design of an evil king. Tom salivates while saying that in exchange, he must give him all 4 great delicacies he had just brought. The protagonist questions how he would do that, saying it was a bit difficult. Tom says he was refusing a royal order and calls his guards, even though his servant tries to argue. He just tells him to be silent. The guards position themselves in front of the king. Tom orders them to take the man's life and make all the women slaves. The soldiers prepare at the king's command. Taein comments that it's no surprise the streets are filled with bandits and starving children. The country is a real mess, but that's enough. He calls forth the heavenly demon. He gives her just one order: don't take their lives. Cheon-ma smiles. Those soldiers advance toward the protagonist. He remarks that they chose the wrong person to serve. Cheon-ma moves forward and decimates them all without even giving them time to react. Tom wonders how she handled all those elite knights. The protagonist apologizes for the commotion, but since things turned out like this, it would be better if they took the throne. So, he places the crown on Kim Il-jin. Tom begs for his life. The hamburger tells him that he is now a king. Then, the protagonist tells him to bring the head chef. The new king orders his servants to do it immediately. Tae-in remarks that this situation is truly hopeless. The servant apologizes for making them wait. This was Sanchez Beck, the king's chef. Tae-in questions his appearance. Tom says it's because he's the son of slaves and just lazy, even when given a chance. Even so, Tom admits he finds his skills very valuable. The servant rats him out, revealing that this pig was working Sanchez to the bone, forcing him to cook without rest. Tom claims Sanchez was ungrateful because he knows nothing about honor. Tae-in complains that Tom really was a disgusting guy. This was revolting. Kim Il-jin declares that he sentences him to dimensional exile. Tom asks them to wait a minute, but that pig king is sent through the portal while screaming to be saved. Layla says a lot has happened. The protagonist comments that it was still very fun. Anyway, the last thing remaining was this person. The future of humanity, currently with a lot of tiredness in his body. People call for Chef Sanchez, and he finally wakes up. Apologizing, he says it will be ready in a minute. Tae-in asks Chef Sanchez to calm down. Sanchez shouts that he needs to cook because it will be a disaster if His Majesty gets hungry. The protagonist tells him not to worry. That tyrant is finished now. This little guy was the new king of Uchenia. Sanchez asks what food he is talking about. Kim Il-jin says he commands Sanchez Beck to make something delicious with the ingredients that are right there. Sanchez is awestruck to see legendary ingredients. The protagonist says not only that, but the cart is full of the other 4 delights of the world. He asks if Sanchez can make the best food in the universe. The chef gulps upon hearing that. He heads toward the kitchen. Yoon-ye puts on her apron and nods to him. The chef starts chopping some onions quickly. Immediately after, he prepares a soup with thorns from the sea of lava. Yoon-ye cries upon seeing the leg of one of the paradise rabbits. Together, they try to break the dragon egg, using it to fry an egg in an immense pan. Both are under extreme pressure, but manage to smile with the result of their food. Then, they return to the royal hall, announcing that it is ready. Sanchez can say with confidence that this is the most delicious meal in the entire world. He shows off the immense omelet they made. Sanchez explains that he salted flowers from the world tree and cooked them with the thighs of the paradise rabbit, then filled it with dragon eggs and served it alongside the thorns. Tai-in comments that the taste was insane. Lee Nara says it was scary to eat something like this. Yoon-ye says she tasted it while she was cooking and it was absolutely divine. They prepare to eat. The protagonist enters a trance upon putting the fork in his mouth, plunging into his own imagination and being thrown far away. He goes on an interdimensional trip while crying. His tears reveal a great blue sky over a flowery field. The protagonist feels a comforting sensation and looks at his hands. Then he looks at the sky and opens his arms. He continues crying while an immense statue of a goddess approaches, holding his hands and kissing him. Amidst this absolute transcendence, Tai-in starts crying in reality too. He comments that this was very delicious. Lee Nara remarks that the artist's reaction proves how good it was. The protagonist thanks the chef. At this point, they would be able to challenge Oishiku Nare correctly. Sanchez says he is grateful to the heroes who saved him and his country, and hopes they manage to pass the test they mentioned. The protagonist creates a bed for him to sleep. He asks if everyone is ready to leave. He advises the system that they are ready to finalize Oishiku Nare's test. The system understands and begins to move them to the gourmet constellation's dimension. Tai-in says he is counting on the cook, and Yoon-ye agrees. They are teleported, but the protagonist wonders why it is so dark that he can't even see anything. Yoon-ye says she is scared, but the protagonist conjures a light. Oishiku Nare says she is impressed that he prepared so quickly. Regarding the test she proposed, it was just to eat the food he had made, but that was too easily done. So, with a notice from Omoshiroi, she prepared something a little different. She welcomes them to the gourmet cooking competition. Lee Nara questions this, and the protagonist complains about it being Omoshiroi's doing. Oishiku Nare asks if they remember the original conditions of the test. It was to make a meal that satisfies her, but they have to gather the ingredients and cook by themselves. The conditions remain the same. Regardless, she summons various people for the kitchen spots. She announces that she gathered the most skilled chefs from each dimension there, and they will present their signature meals. If the protagonist's meal isn't the most delicious among them, she won't be satisfied. Lee Nara shouts that this isn't fair because she is changing the rules. The protagonist says it is okay. He already expected this. Besides, they prepared the most delicious meal in the universe. Oishiku Nare replies that the chef she is betting on particularly is someone she had her eye on for a moment. She points to Sanchez, who is standing there with the 4 delights on his head. The group is shocked, saying those are their ingredients. Tai-in asks the system what happened to their ingredients. Yoon-ye asks what they can do. Meanwhile, Sanchez opens his eyes ready to cook. A fish chef says this is the special meal his clan eats on their most important days, the underwater world cake. It is more delicious if placed next to a clay bowl. Oishiku Nare thanks him for the meal. She eats it, saying it is really delicious. But the cake wasn't even baked correctly. A Galgalang of the Quilok clan will now be extinct as punishment. Then she orders the next one to come. Kim Il-jin asks what that was. They hadn't just been eliminated, but exterminated. Sanchez apologizes to them. The constellation said they cannot share ingredients. Tai-in questions what kind of nonsense this is. Lee Nara says he knows those ingredients are theirs. Sanchez replies that he is there, unable to repay their kindness. He really feels sorry that things turned out like this. Tai-in says they shouldn't confuse their opponent. It was Oishiku Nare who placed them in this situation. So, he calls out to the constellation with a shout. If she took all their ingredients, they couldn't do anything. Oishiku Nare replies that he wasn't prepared. In that case, she'll give a little more time to gather ingredients again. She will judge the meals when they are complete, and he must do his best. Yoon-ye asks about summoning the ingredients again. Oishiku Nare replies that she will accept only ingredients gathered by them personally. Summoning or copying ingredients with magic is cheating. Yoon-ye complains that this is ridiculous. Nara asks what they should do, wondering about using their ability to turn back time. The protagonist explains that constellations are not affected by space-time distortions. At that moment, a strange idea enters the protagonist's head. He thanks the narrator for this. He advises everyone that it will be okay because he has an idea. Oishiku Nare says she is anxious for the next meal. The protagonist remarks that while it's good to crush everything forcefully sometimes, it is also fun to overcome obstacles with risky moves. Then, he has a question for Yudo Rinai. A chef presents a meal to Oishiku Nare. heated xenon ore, but she continues extinguishing all the chefs whose meals she hated without even caring. She wonders if there won't be any delicious meals. Then she notices that Chef Sanchez seems to have just finished cooking. Oishiku Nare asks what it is, as they look like dragon eggs. Sanchez declares it is the most delicious omelet in the world. The constellation replies, that is a lot of confidence. Sanchez explains he was only able to prepare the meal thanks to the efforts of the heroes present. Oshiku Nare ignores this and puts the fork in her mouth. A wide smile spreads across her face. She calls it perfect, and admits it truly is the most delicious food in the world. It seemed they had a major contender for victory. The other chefs are surprised he was spared. Oishiku Nare says he really brought out all the natural flavors of the ingredients and wonders where he found them. But Sanchez replies that he gives up on this competition. This food wasn't made with ingredients he brought, so he can't go outside with a clear conscience. Oishiku Nare says that in that case, he was saying he prefers to be extinguished. Tae-in questions what she was talking about. Those were his ingredients. It didn't matter how delicious the meal was, they were going to win anyway. Sanchez tries to argue, but Oishiku Nare interrupts. It was getting really interesting. As the gourmet constellation, it makes no sense to extinguish such a good chef. The competition ends, and the chefs step forward. Oishiku Nare says that out of the 100 participating teams, only 8 passed her judgment, and what remained were the representatives of humanity. Oishiku Nare questions what happened, since they hadn't even started cooking. Tai-in says they have already completed all the test conditions. The constellation asks if he's trying to bluff now. Even if he's afraid of being extinguished, this is very disappointing. Tai-in questions if she is really the gourmet constellation. Oishiku Nare asks why the sudden question. The protagonist wants to know how prepared she is to eat delicious food. Oishiku Nare replies that gourmet cooking is her reason for living, and he was doubting that? He needs more than simple extinction. She will teach him a harsher lesson. She will hunt down all of humanity, cook them, and eat until extinction. Yodu Rinai asks what the pervert is thinking, and the protagonist calls out to the constellation, because she never tasted the meal they prepared. There was a condition for trying their meal. She must give up being a constellation and become human. Oishiku Nare asks what he's talking about. Tai-in replies that he confirmed with Yodu Rinai earlier that constellations can give up their status. You immortals will never understand the real meaning of the essence of eating. So, their meal can only be tasted if she gives up being a constellation and becomes human. This was the taste of life. The girls are impressed by this. Oishiku Nare bursts out laughing, saying it's fine, she will play along with him. He claims she doesn't understand the essence of eating, therefore she will become human for a moment, but the test conditions remain the same. If he tries to attack her while she is human, she will consider it interference and stop immediately. Since the constellation of justice is here, she'll ensure a fair trial. Then she starts laughing while glowing. Tae-in says now it was his turn. The constellation finishes transforming and says that for a moment, she took the form of a complete human. But the protagonist replies that she is done for. Then he activates his ability to turn back time. Temporal distortions usually don't work because she's a constellation, but now it's okay, and he activates his magic. They return to a green field. Oishiku Nare asks where he brought her. The protagonist says he could go back to any moment. Then Dekasos is there, descending to Earth in his dragon form. Linara asks if they really went back to the past. The protagonist says he is the hero of the prophecy, and he must turn into a human soon. Oishiku Nare says he was afraid of losing his life. Yodu Rinai says she shouldn't worry because that won't happen. Tai-in replies that he won't let it, and must confirm once more that she is ready to do anything for good food. Oishiku Nare confirms. After all, she is the constellation of gastronomy. No matter how incredible human cuisine is, she will see what he can manage. The protagonist accepts and tells her to fully trust them, and to remember that she would regret it even more. Covered in dirt, Oishiku Nare wonders why she's doing this. Rolling around on the ground, Dekasos blows a whistle, controlling the exercise. Tai-in tells her to watch her attitude and sing properly. Yun-ye notes he hasn't even served in the army yet. Oishiku Nare asks what this has to do with cooking and wants to know why she's here. Tae-in asks if she's really talking back to a constellation right now. The woman instantly regretted everything. She continued doing the exercises for the rest of the day. Upon finishing, she rests, lying on the ground. Tae-in asks if she has finally finished. Oishiku Nare says that if the food isn't good, he's finished. Then the protagonist uses the time turner spell again, saying they must keep going. The woman asks about it, and the spell is activated. Later, she climbs the world tree with a rope, asking what kind of shit this is, while the protagonist orders her to climb and gather as many flowers from the world tree as she can. Oishiku Nare asks why her, because if she fell, she would lose her life. But Yodu Rinai says she won't die, and they will catch her somehow. while the protagonist orders her to hold on tight. Yunya asks if it isn't too much, but Cheon-ma says she is satisfied. The protagonist comments that this will take the whole day. As time passes, Oishiku Nare finally manages to grab a flower. She hears the elder say it is delicious beyond words. She approaches to taste it, but the protagonist takes it from her hand, saying they need these for cooking. Oishiku Nare threatens to take his life, but Yodu Rinai reminds her that breaking the test rules is forbidden. They have to move to the kitchen. In the Demon King's castle, Zeta bursts out laughing. He calls Oishiku Nare's human form a ridiculous sight. She asks why the constellation of war is here. The protagonist says to calm down. They will ask politely now. Oishiku Nare asks about it, and the protagonist explains that the ingredients she stole were all Zeta's. He says they must finish the test and deal with this fool because he's crazy for a fight. The girl accepts and asks for the ingredients, please. Zeta starts creating many rabbits, eggs, and thorns. Taein says that now that they gathered everything, they need to cook. Oishiku Nare thinks that finally, this is it. They must finish this otherworldly episode. Everyone is teleported away. Zeta comments that he is the Demon King and was bored. In the king's castle, a scream is heard. Tae-in defeats the guards, saying he didn't think he'd see this guy twice in one day. Tom asks them to spare his life, but anyway, the protagonist activates his dimensional exile and sends him away again. He says he will leave the rest with Yunya, and she accepts. Sanchez was resting in his room. The girl tries to wake him up, but warns that she will take over the kitchen for a bit. In the royal hall, Oishiku Nare complains that she's starving and wants to know what's happening. The girl enters, saying she finished. The constellation throws her cards away. He will judge a human, but he will dress appropriately for it. After going through all that, if the taste is bad, they'd better be ready for the consequences. Yunya is surprised by this. Oishiku Nare asks what the meal is. The girl replies that it's a set meal, opening the lid to reveal the most delicious lasagna in the world. She tested all the ingredients, and lasagna would be best. But at this point, Oishiku Nare can hear nothing else. For the first time, she experiences a primal instinct of extreme hunger. She realizes the best meal she could have is one that satisfies her hunger, and this would be another unprecedented disorder in the universe. The woman cries while tasting the food. Sanchez watches from afar and falls completely in love. Tai-in asks about the taste. Oishiku Nare says she regrets her earlier words. It's the first time the constellation of gastronomy has felt like this. It was made with the same ingredients as the omelet she tasted before, but every cell in her body is enjoying this food. So it was a true meal, and she cannot deny it because it really is the best. Yunya asks about the test, and Oishiku Nare confirms. They passed. The group celebrates. Yunya asks if the protagonist knew this would happen all along. Tai-in denies it. It was a gamble. He thought developing the others would be more interesting, so he just created the flow. The girl asks what he meant. The protagonist replies that it was only possible thanks to her. The food she made at his house was truly delicious. Her cooking skills gave him the confidence to believe in her. The girl blushes, replying that clearly he should be grateful. The system announces he has cleared the constellation of gastronomy's test and will unlock Ascension Stage 3. Kim Il-jin questions this. Even when he used it before, he lost fights. The system tells him to stop it. The protagonist implores it to release the next level of Ascension. Nothing was more important than getting stronger. Fighting a constellation on equal footing would be impossible, but he didn't plan on playing their test games forever. Yunya says she cleaned her plate. Oishiku Nare replies that one must not leave leftovers. The girl asks if she's still hungry, and the constellation responds that she feels like she could eat more. Sanchez interrupts, excusing himself. He wants to know if he should make dessert. He's never seen anyone enjoy food like her. As a chef, he was fully committed to cooking something for her. Oishiku Nare definitely accepts. The protagonist asks what those two are doing now. Yodu Rine says she worked hard, and asks if she plans to report directly to the King of Constellations. Oishiku Nare looks at Sanchez, blushing. She answers no. She has decided to continue in this dimension as a human. Yodu Rinai asks what she's talking about. The test should be over, and she should return to her role as the constellation of gastronomy. Oishiku Nare replies that she gave up on many worlds with living beings and needs to rethink the meaning of cooking. The constellation of justice says this will disrupt the balance of the universe, but she replies her mind is made up. She approaches Yunya immediately. She tells her to take it. It was her artifact, the immaculate cutlery. Yunya asks if it's okay to accept this. Oishiku Nare tells her to think of it as gratitude for the delicious food. Then she asks what she should do with it. The protagonist says he hasn't seen these things, but they are certainly interesting. Yodu Rinai thinks about the destruction of the constellation of Wrath and the constellation of gastronomy giving up her title. She wonders how much change this human will bring to the universe. Onya says they should probably split them up, but doesn't really know how to use them. Cheon-ma comments on the fork, while Layla talks about a constellation's knife. That just leaves the golden spoon for her. Tae-in says she should keep it because she needs to become stronger. Kim Il-jin addresses Oishikunare as Madam, taking off his crown. He advises that if she's staying here, it would be good to become the country's queen. Earlier, when she was hungry after everything, she wanted to eat him but held back, and he respects that. Oishikunare replies that she is the constellation of gastronomy and cannot just eat anything. Still, she thanks him for the gift. Kim Il-jin wonders what that was about. His pride was hurt. The constellation of culinary says that becoming leader in the constellation of war's dimension would teach her a lot. The protagonist comments that she probably doesn't know much about the constellation of war yet. Yoon-ye asks what's next. Tae-in answers that the next test was about to begin. After a zombie apocalypse and an otherworldly cooking journey, if the pattern continues. Lee Nara comments that for every constellation test, it's as if the genre keeps changing. The protagonist agrees she's right. He wonders how the author can keep changing genres in a single work. Yodu Rinai replies that there won't be any more tests. She will persuade the Council of Constellations. Then, they should return to their daily lives. Yoon-ye asks if this means they won't be taken to strange tests anymore. Just then, Omoshiroi appears, replying that that will be difficult. Everyone turns around, and he says hello. He warns that the next constellation is already waiting and will take them immediately. Tie-in questions. Omoshiroi being there, and Yodu Rinai tells him to stop it. Omoshiroi explains that the next constellation is none other than one of the zodiacs, and they must go quickly. Interdimensional teleportation happens, taking the protagonists far away, leaving Oishikunare and Sanchez surprised. In another dimension, it suddenly starts raining. Tai-in wonders what this place is now. Yoon-ye complains about the non-stop rain. The protagonist complains that Omoshiroi dumped them in a place like this and then disappeared. He wants to know if everyone is okay, while the girls complain they are totally soaked. Tai-in thinks this place is bad and wants to know which constellation made this kind of place their lair. Cheon-ma says she was feeling killing intent from afar. None of the previous constellations had that, so this dimension was something different, until a voice coming from below says it wasn't on that level. Anyway, to overcome her test, she emerges from the waters, warning that it was impossible. Yodu Rinai complains that it's the constellation of despair. The protagonist shouts that it's impossible. The girl asks her to listen. This group can't take any more tests. But the constellation of despair replies that it is impossible. No matter what she says, she won't change her mind. The Council of Constellations keeps saying she overlaps tests. It means they want him to grow even by going through the extreme. It was impossible to wait that long. The latent negentropy in him was definitely of a quality never seen before, and she wants to consume it. Then she starts sinking the protagonist into the swamp. Layla asks when this happened. Yoon-ye complains that it's already up to her thighs. The constellation of despair says they must fall into despair and lose their lives in her test. That was her condition. The protagonist asks if she thinks things will go like that. An explosion follows. Tae-in calls her out. He asks what is wrong with constellations. They created them, and now they want to take their lives. He really doesn't like her, and thus activates Ascension Stage 3. He warns that he considered having her as an ally since her design is decent, but forget that. He prepares his magic. However, the Constellation of Despair stops the blow with her palm. She warns that it is impossible, and she cannot permit such dangerous actions in her domain. The protagonist thinks this incredible power and speed must be the combat power of one of the 12 houses. It was on a completely different level than when he first fought Yodu Rinai. These guys really want to take his life, so they won't even give him a chance. But he also has his tricks. He activates the Constellation of Wrath's artifact. He warns that he has grown too since the last time. A punch hits the Constellation's guard with his Berserker punch. She is repelled far away, and a stellar explosion happens. The protagonist comments that now, in Stage 3, he can control the power of the Wrath Amulet. The Constellation of Despair complains that this is impossible, and wants to know how a mere human possesses this level of power. Tae-in thinks it is possible and now he can defeat a constellation. So he advances against her once more. But Yodu Rinai tells the pervert to stop. The protagonist tells her to get out of the way. If she keeps acting like an annoying character like this, her popularity will plummet. She says she was protecting him and humanity. At this point, no matter how hard Omoshiroi and she try, the Council of Constellations wants to exterminate humanity. The protagonist lowers his fist. The Constellation of Despair stands up, saying it is impossible. Humanity will not escape extinction either way. That is what she decided. Eun-ye asks what that is, as there were waves behind her. The Constellation of Despair replies that they must drown in the swamp of despair while experiencing the worst despair possible. Tae-in complains that his companions are in danger and tries to activate his rank A defensive barrier ability. Muramu stops him, telling him to just give up and fall into despair. Yodu Rinai asks everyone to calm down and listen carefully. The authority of the constellation of despair was such that the more one falls into the swamp of despair, they would be trapped in an illusion of their worst internal suffering. They would probably experience agony worse than any other, yet they must not despair. If they endure and survive to the end, they will definitely return. The constellation tries to say it's impossible, but Yodu Rinai replies that it isn't. The humans she saw were amazing things. Even if they were to break the order of the universe, their wisdom and willpower were incredible. They aren't weak enough to lose their lives in her test. It will be all right in that case. The most important thing is to never break. The swamp engulfs the protagonists. Tai-in tries to defend himself using personal exclusion. Yodu Rinai appears, resting her hands on his shoulders. She reassures him that everyone will be okay. He needs to surrender to the swamp and overcome his own despair. She tells him she can't help him directly, even though she isn't affected by it. Tai-in looks back. Amidst the chaos, he tells her he's leaving his companions in her care. Yodu Rinai tells him not to worry. She'll protect their bodies. Tai-in deactivates his personal exclusion and sinks into the swamp. A voice starts calling out to him, telling him to wake up. He wonders who it is. It's Kim Il-jin. He tells Tai-in he was supposed to buy bread, but he's just lying around sleeping instead. He slams Tae-in's face onto the desk, calling him a bastard. Tae-in wonders where the hell he is and what's going on. It hurts. Kim Il-jin asks if the idiot is awake yet. He says Tai-in has no choice and needs to come quickly. Tae-in realizes it's a classroom. It doesn't seem like he went back in time. Kim Il-jin warns him that he's about to get a real education. Tae-in wonders if this is the despair situation he was warned about. Kim Il-jin asks if he's coming. Tae-in experiences flashbacks of being bullied. He wonders what this is and what he should do. He grabs Kim Il-jin's hand. Tae-in tells him they should go. He internally questions if he isn't supposed to be an SSS rank super strong protagonist. They go to the rooftop, where he is brutally beaten. Tae-in wonders what kind of plot development this is. He was sure the last moment was the satisfying turning point where the bully gets taught a lesson by SSS rank power. Kim Il-jin complains that today really sucks. Tae-in asks why he's being beaten up again. He tries to activate his D rank freezing skill. Nothing happens. Kim Il-jin calls him a pathetic loser. Tae-in thinks about how even his weakest ability won't activate. No amulet of fury. No ascension unlocked. This is really bad. A punch hits his stomach. It's a situation where despair is his only option. Kim Il-jin tells him he can't even shine shoes properly. Il-jin threatens that if Tai-in doesn't bring it before the break ends, he'll lose his life. Tai-in thinks he should be destroying planets with a snap of his fingers. This is definitely a fictional world in his head, but it feels so real. He wonders if the others are going through situations like this too. That bastard wasn't originally this cruel. Tae-in stands up from the dirty water. He thinks this place is like hell, where he just sits in despair, but now he's turned his back on it. His battle instincts as a hero who saved the world remain. He advances with a punch, but it doesn't even faze Kim Il-jin. Tai-in gets scared and screams as he's grabbed by the shirt. He is beaten to the point of being unrecognizable. Tai-in thinks this bastard is begging to become hamburger meat. He can't call up his status window or use his skills. If he keeps getting beaten, he'll fall into despair. He needs to learn how to fight. Learning on his own isn't an option. He needs someone to teach him. He remembers Jo Yoon-ye, who has incredible athletic ability. Even if he doesn't learn to fight, he can learn how to build up his physical strength. He needs to visit Yoon-ye's classroom during the break. His nose won't stop bleeding. It's embarrassing to be seen like this by Yoon-ye. Then he notices Kim Il-jin is talking to her. Il-jin is telling her he'll pay for everything, and she shouldn't feel pressured. Eun-ye rejects him and tells him to leave her alone. Kim Il-jin puts his hand on her shoulder, telling her not to play hard to get. Eun-ye pushes him away, telling him to get lost. The bully asks if she really thinks he'll keep giving her attention out here in the hallway. Suddenly, Tai-in grabs him from behind, saying they need to leave. Il-jin demands to know who he is and tells him to beat it, claiming she's with him. Il-jin asks if moss has grown on Tai-in's brain. Tai-in thinks his body moved on its own, because he felt he had to do something. The bully grabs Tai-in's arm, saying this perverted bastard is getting really annoying. He says Tai-in is begging to go to hell today. Yoon-ye tries to tell them to stop, but Kim Il-jin executes a suplex, slamming the protagonist's back onto the floor. People comment that he looked like Michael Chandler from the UFC. Yoon-ye asks if this crazy bastard wants to go to juvie. Kim Il-jin asks who's going to send him there, bragging that his dad will just cover for him anyway. Tai-in thinks this is it, a despair he cannot escape on his own strength. He just wanted peace. Yoon-ye grabs the delinquent's fist. Kim Il-jin asks what the hell this is. The girl asks if he's going to kill Tai-in, telling him to stop before he goes too far. The bully accuses her of defending the idiot, suggesting there must be something going on between them. Eun-ye gets irritated at his nonsense. Kim Il-jin shouts, demanding to know their relationship, and grabs her hand. Eun-ye gives him a cold look. She uses her free arm to remove his hand and spins into a move. Kim Il-jin falls to the ground with his arm twisted. Eun-ye starts punching him in the face repeatedly. The protagonist watches her defeat the bully, thinking it's absolutely incredible. Eun-ye walks over, calling him a pervert. She wants to know if the back of his neck is okay. The protagonist sits up, saying everything is fine. Eun-ye asks why he stepped in. She could have handled it herself. The protagonist just wants to know if she's good at fighting. She explains that when she was younger, she watched Special Forces videos and thought they were cool, so she started training seriously to become a soldier. Anyway, even if he says he's fine, taking a hard blow to the back of the neck can be serious. She asks if he can stand. They need to go to the infirmary together. The protagonist reaches out his hand to her. Just as their fingers are about to touch, Kim Il-jin stands up, looming behind her. He demands to know what kind of relationship they have. He wants to know if Eun-ye thinks she can get away with this just because she's a girl. She denies it. The protagonist thinks that even if this isn't reality, Il-jin wouldn't go so far as to hit Eun-ye. Kim Il-jin advances to punch the girl. Eun-ye is ready to counterattack, but Lee Nara interrupts, shouting that the teacher is coming. Kim Il-jin stops just before attacking, cursing his luck. He tells the pervert he's going to hell after school. Then he spits in Tai-in's hair. Eun-ye calls him a crazy, disgusting bastard. She demands to know what's wrong with Il-jin. The protagonist says he's fine. He thinks that even if this is virtual reality, just having her get angry on his behalf is enough for him. Eun-ye helps him up while Lee Nara watches from a distance. They arrive at the empty school infirmary. She remarks that he was able to walk here on his own because he's okay, and his eyes seem focused too. Still, she decides to wait there until the teacher arrives. She checks her phone while the protagonist lies on the cot. He asks why she hasn't left yet. Eun-ye replies that it would be bad if he fainted. Besides, she doesn't feel like going to class. The protagonist thinks her honesty is very cute. He asks her if she's good at fighting. Eun-ye replies that she doesn't want to make small talk with him either. The protagonist thanks her anyway, then asks if she wants to hear something interesting. He explains that he and Kim Il-jin have known each other since kindergarten because his father works for Il-jin's father. As kids, they just played together as friends. But at some point, he started realizing how different they were. Then it just naturally happened. One of Kim Il-jin's friends bumped into him. The protagonist turned around, irritated, and came face to face with his childhood friend. Il-jin just turned his face away. It was a distance that would never be closed again. Before he knew it, to Kim Il-jin, he was just some loser he knew as a kid. His treatment got progressively worse until it turned into this, but it hadn't been this bad before. Eun-ye says she can't listen to this. She asks if he's an idiot for letting it happen. The protagonist says there are strong people like her, and then there are people like him who can't do anything. The girl replies that he's a hopeless idiot. If he tried, he could change things. Tai-in says she only says that because she doesn't know. Your dad's job was involved too. There were things he really couldn't do. Eun-ye calls him an idiot. She wants to know if his dad would stay silent if he did something after seeing that. She questions why she's even bothering with this bastard. Tae-in suggests she help him out then. The girl asks about what, and the protagonist says he'll give what she said a shot, but she needs to teach him how to fight. Eun-ye stares at him for a few seconds, then smiles, asking if he really wants this because she'll give him a try, but suddenly her eyes change, turning blue. The protagonist thinks it's a wave of despair and wonders why. Eun-ye replies that she doesn't want anything to do with him. A swamp appears beneath the protagonist. He thinks he can't just give up like this, so he has to do something, anything. Breaking free from the water, he says he likes her. Eun-ye asks what he just said. The protagonist repeats that he likes her. He thinks it's not reality anyway. As long as it turns out like this, he can free her from despair. But Eun-ye yells that first Kim Il-jin and now this pervert are acting crazy today. She should have just let herself get hit. The protagonist keeps sinking into the swamp. He thinks it can't end like this, yelling about her lasagna because it was the meal she cooked better than anyone. Eun-ye asks how he knows that. The protagonist answers that she said she trained to be a soldier when she was younger, but actually wanted to be a baseball player and a chef. Eun-ye questions if he's some kind of crazy stalker, but the protagonist denies it, yelling that he was her boyfriend in the future, thinking that he doesn't care anymore. Eun-ye remains in despair and turns to leave. The protagonist thinks he thought he knew a lot, but it seemed like this was the end, until she grabs his hand and pulls him out. Eun-ye demands he explain properly, because when she was younger, she did prepare to be a chef and a baseball player, but she wants to know how he knows that, and he better not come with nonsense like coming from the future. The protagonist looks at their hands touching. Eun-ye remembers that he likes her, so she smacks him in the face, asking why the pervert was holding her hand. Tae-in replies that she grabbed him first. The nurse, seeing the scene, asks what the two of them are doing. Outside the school, Eun-ye summarizes that he was lying about being her future boyfriend, but they were comrades fighting aliens in another dimension, and one of those aliens, one of the strongest, had trapped him in a virtual torment space. This crazy bastard needs to be committed to a mental hospital. Tae-in replies that it's all true, but now that he hears it out loud, even he thinks it sounds ridiculous. It seemed she couldn't see how he was trapped in the swamp of despair either, which was very convenient. Anyway, he doesn't care anymore. He just wants to learn how to fight. She must have seen Kim Il-jin's eyes earlier. He's really going to kill him. The girl wonders why she should waste her time with a crazy bastard like him. Tae-in insists it was all true, except for the future part, and there was no way for him to know that when she was younger, she considered being a player and a chef. He won't lie to her anymore. Eun-ye thinks everything he said was true. The protagonist continues that more importantly, Kim Il-jin really tried to hit her earlier. He won't let that slide and let him mess with her again. Eun-ye blushes upon hearing this, saying that this wretched guy can't win against Kim Il-jin in a fight. The weight class difference between the two is too great, and Kim Il-jin was probably trained in some martial art too. She thinks he must believe a runt like him could get strong enough to beat him in just a few hours. Tae-in replies that he should at least try, and she was the one who said that if he worked hard, he could change things. Eun-ye asks if she said that, and the protagonist remembers the exact moment. She sighs, then accepts, but says there's no way he'll win in a fair fight. Approaching the protagonist and punching him in the face, Tae-in falls to the ground and asks why the sudden hit. Eun-ye tells him he has to end it before the fight even starts, creating an opening and aiming for a vital point. They would keep practicing until class ended, and the protagonist gets up off the floor. In the classroom, the teacher tells everyone to look at the class group chat and pay attention. Tae-in thinks Eun-ye's training was tougher than the constellations tests. At this point, his energy was about to run out until Kim Il-jin calls him, ordering him to follow, while the protagonist wonders why his art style was changing. Tae-in stands up, saying he understands, while thinking that for now he'll follow the plan Eun-ye made, questioning how he got hit just now. The protagonist answers it was because she attacked suddenly with her elbow, and Eun-ye replies that was the point. He got hit because he didn't expect the blow. If he had known, he would have at least thought about dodging. It would be the same with Kim Il-jin. That guy only thinks about attacking and doesn't even think Tae-in will fight back. So, he must remain submissive as always until he sees an opening. Kim Il-jin calls out the perverted bastard, saying that whatever action he takes against him is his own fault, so he better not dare blame him later. It isn't until the protagonist kicks him in a vital point before he finishes taking off his shirt. Kim Il-jin goes into shock and even cries. The protagonist thinks he found the opening and hit the vital point, and it worked just like Eun-ye said. That delinquent throws himself on the ground, rolling from side to side, feeling immense pain, saying he's a crazy bastard and he's going to kill him for doing that. Tae-in sighs, wondering if this wasn't cowardly. Even if he doesn't formally know martial arts, just practicing hitting vital points was cowardly. Eun-ye questions if he's an idiot, because he was being beaten by a childhood friend who knew the weight difference full well, besides being bullied and tormented. That was the true attitude of a coward. The protagonist is enlightened by this, returning to the present while Kim Il-jin screams in pain, complaining that he's going to kill him. Meanwhile, the protagonist thinks that he used to believe violence was never justified in any situation, so he won't justify this either. No matter how vivid it is, this is a virtual space. He is nothing more than a fictional character made to provoke a specific emotion, saying he won't let someone like him take him down, landing a blow on Kim Il-jin's face. From afar, Eun-ye thinks there was no way he actually beat Kim Il-jin. The protagonist yells for him to not even think about messing with him or Eun-ye again. The girl blushes hearing this but hides again, thinking that he did it and overcame the despair, until Kim Il-jin grabs the protagonist's hand. He tries to change position, twisting his wrist. Eun-ye thinks he's an idiot, while Kim Il-jin warns that he's going to lose his life today, until he gets hit by a fist in his face. The protagonist managed to fight back easily. Eun-ye thinks that in a submission position, he was still thinking about attacking. Il-jin really was an idiot. The protagonist thinks it was just like Eun-ye taught him, remembering earlier when she climbed on top of him. The protagonist says that was a bit much, but he gets hit by a fist in his face. Eun-ye questions what he said, and the protagonist tries to speak, being hit repeatedly by the girl. She says that instead of opening his mouth, he should try to escape to get into the dominant position. The protagonist says she planted her foot on the ground and pulled his body up. The girl hits him one more time, wanting to know if it's still not sinking in, because if he gets captured like this, he can assume he's lost the absolute majority of the time. On the other hand, if he gets this position, he wins most of the time. That guy, Kim Il-jin, doesn't even understand knockouts and submissions. In that case, if he assumes the position, She'll show him something useful. He must keep his center of gravity at the waist so the opponent can't roll, then lock their arm movements and finish properly. He executes the move exactly as Eun-ye taught him earlier, reiterating that Kim Il-jin never should have messed with him. The bully is knocked out cold. The protagonist feels the aura of despair fading away. Eun-ye appears, remarking that she didn't expect him to score a knockout like that. Not bad at all. Maybe he has natural fighting talent. The protagonist agrees. It was all thanks to having a good teacher. The girl finds this odd, but then laughs, asking if he's an idiot. Tae-in realizes this is the first time he's seen her smile like that. He asks how she's so good at fighting. Even with military prep, it doesn't make sense. Eun-ye admits it wasn't exactly normal. Her father knew someone in special forces, so she received training similar to real combat. The protagonist thinks, the legendary militarily trained high school girl. She lists them off: boxing, taekwondo, jujitsu, karate, and other martial arts. Now that he's defeated Kim Il-jin, the protagonist thinks he must have finished the test of despair. He wonders why he's still stuck in this world. Suddenly, a tattooed man asks why Kim Il-jin got knocked out. The protagonists turn, facing a group of delinquents asking if the loser really knocked him out. Eun-ye asks who they are. The protagonist replies that they are the Baram group. It's made up of Park Kang-woo, the Gale, nicknamed for his big head, Bang Yuki, the Whirlwind. Rumor has it he burps a lot. Go Tae-woong, the Typhoon, who was just big, and Zeroth, the Storm. He was an idle trainee, got kicked out, but insists on using that name. Eun-ye calls it childish. The protagonist tells her to listen, because these aren't normal delinquents. Kim Il-jin's father is the leader of the Sunpung group. That company started as a dirty outfit dealing with gangs. The second-generation members gathered around Kim Il-jin, committing all sorts of evil deeds like a pack of delinquents. Zeroth asks if they are thugs. That's a word for dumb idiots and gangsters. Yuki questions his choice of words. Zeroth claims they are just good friends. He approaches and touches the protagonist on the shoulder. He wants to know if he's the one who left Il-jin in that state. A memory surfaces. If he messes with them, his father could end up in trouble too. The sensation is vivid. Zeroth says this means he isn't his friend. The protagonist thinks he can't resist even knowing it isn't real. Eun-ye tells him to cut it out. The idol asks what that was about and if she's Tae-in's girlfriend. The protagonist thinks that in that moment, something completely different appeared. It cuts across the entire space. Eun-ye asks what shit that bastard just said, her expression totally somber. The protagonist was once reading a webtoon about fusion and laughing. A friend of Eun-ye called her and told her to look to the side because her boyfriend was passing by. Eun-ye got irritated immediately upon hearing that, telling her not to say things like that, even as a joke. And now, Zeroth had repeated that exact mistake. He apologizes for the misunderstanding, but that means she doesn't have a boyfriend right now. Tae-woong comments that he's a womanizing bastard. Yuki says he got kicked out of his agency because of women. Eun-ye tells him to get lost while she's still being nice, but Zeroth asks what happens if he doesn't. The girl shifts into a combat stance. Tae-in interrupts. He says Il-jin threw the first punch. They ended the fight, and that's what happened. Zeroth questions this, but quickly lands a punch on the protagonist. Eun-ye thinks it was fast. She couldn't even react in time to block it. Zeroth warns that he should have ended up screwed anyway. Eun-ye takes the lead in the fight. The idol asks who she is, but says he doesn't hit women anyway. She tells him to leave, but Zeroth turns, saying his friends are a little different. All three prepare for combat against the girl. The protagonist steps forward, calling out to his friend. Then he tells her to get out of there. Eun-ye asks what he's talking about. The protagonist repeats for her to get out. She wants to know if just because he learned to fight, he thinks he can handle everyone alone. Tae-in replies that she isn't even his friend. Eun-ye is shocked by his words and gets annoyed. She calls him a loser while walking away. The protagonist thinks this was the right thing to do. Eun-ye could probably take them all down herself, but if she did, she would become a target of the Sunpung group. This is a burden he has to carry. Zeroth asks if he's finished arguing with his girlfriend. The protagonist gets into his stance and tells those bastards to bring it on. The idol agrees and advances with a knee strike that connects. The protagonist is knocked out. He remembers nothing after that. But now, he was in the swamp of despair, and it was surprisingly comfortable there. Wondering if just sinking slowly like this could free him from all the pain. He closes his eyes and starts remembering all his companions. Then he denies it, saying he isn't the only one sinking in the swamp of despair, cursing it all because he can't go any further, begging for one more chance. Suddenly, a light appears. He wakes up to his father asking if he finally came to his senses. The protagonist complains about the bright light and looks to the side. His father asks how he couldn't recognize him. Tae-in bolts upright, recognizing him, then screams in fright while his father asks if he has amnesia. The protagonist asks if that's really something to say to his son right now. His father says at least he's alive, which is a relief. He asks why the hell he was stuck there. His father tells him his mother was here crying. Seriously, he He keeps getting beaten up and making his parents worry. The protagonist says it's not like he wanted to get hit. His father asks if he knows the guy who did this to him. Tae-in says it wasn't just one guy, but several. His father starts thinking about that, assuring him it was okay. As he always says, violence resolves nothing. Going back to his time, they were kids who grew up fighting, but times have changed. The protagonist thinks he worked very hard to hide this. His father says he has a responsibility to leave him a more peaceful world. Tae-in asks what he's talking about. His father replies that his son should stay in the hospital, get well soon, and focus on his studies. No matter what happens, he will always be on his son's side. The protagonist replies that it's strange. When he talks to his father, the despair disappears, so he tells him to make sure to tell his mother not to worry. Outside, Tae-in's father thinks that his son knows nothing about the kind of person his father really was. Kim Il-jun's father's phone starts ringing. He wonders what happened for director Bayan to call, but he just asks what happened. Il-jun's father wants to know what he means by speaking that way. Bayan replies that he swore he would never let the shadows of Sunpung fall on his family, as executive director and head of the strategy group. As night falls over the city, Yuki asks if he's a pervert to be defeated by the loser. Il-jun screams that he doesn't remember. His friend tells him not to worry. He won't spread rumors that the young master of the Sunpung group was beaten by a loser. Kang-woo says they were going to beat up the loser properly until Baeon Taejong appeared, saying they were the ones who did it. The whole group turns, and Kang-woo asks who this old man is until Il-jun's father calls, screaming that he's a bastard, demanding to know what the hell he's doing running around like that. Il-jun asks what he's talking about, but his father tells him to shut up and come home, because the father of the guy he messed with. The leadership of the South Korean corporation was legendary. It started with President Kim, whose success story was widely known to the public, but in the past he was nothing more than a gangster running small bars. The fact that he made several mistakes with other gangs was not well known, and there was a good reason for that. The legend of Sunpung was a tale of corruption, a story written by the deviant's own father. He single-handedly dominated local crime syndicates and controlled the local market, completely overpowering everyone. After defeating all the gangsters, he integrated them into his businesses. Using his natural business acumen, he ran things properly and built it into something massive. Bars turned into restaurants, and the underworld life transformed into Sunpung Entertainment. It eventually evolved into heavy industry offices, riding the wave of South Korea's rapid growth, with the company leading the charge. Tae-in's father was that kind of man. The condition he set while firmly refusing the position of Sunpung's chairman was simple. His wife and son were to have a normal life. No extravagant chaebol luxuries, no underground violence, just a normal life. Once that was guaranteed, he gave up everything else. It was an agreement bordering on madness, but for this man, family was everything. He chose a simple life, far from power and glory. When Tae-in was a child and asked what his father did for a living, he would simply reply that he was just an office worker. Il-jun's father now says that he has touched this man's greatest taboo and needs to get somewhere safe immediately. Kang-woo asks if the sir knows them, but Taejong replies that he certainly knows them very well. He was the eldest son of Yang-hoon from Heavy Industries. Then, with a single movement, he throws him aside. Il-jun's father keeps trying to call out to his son, but gets no response due to the shock.